Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the August Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and thank you for joining us today. My name is John Milner, and I am chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. I don't know what is reverbing. I'm sorry about that. I don't know if it's... My name is John Milner, and I'm chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. Typical of our commission hearings, we have a full agenda, and it's my goal to get everyone out here early today. As a reminder, please limit individual conversations during the meeting. This ensures commission members and applicants can hear one another. Please remain quiet until you are called upon. When you speak at the podium, please state your name and address for our records. Before the commission votes on each item, I will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. Speakers are given 3 minutes to relay information to commission members. Please be thorough, but also mindful of your time. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located in the PrimeGov site. If you're following along online, select Agenda on the right side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see items being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting are posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, no new materials may be shared with the commission. So if you brought handouts or examples with you, please keep them at your seat, as we cannot accept and review. I repeat, we cannot accept new information to review in today's meeting that was not submitted previously. Keith or Mark, will you please call roll?
Milner.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
Gaines.
Present.
McBride.
Present.
Orr.
Present.
Whitley.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For anyone unfamiliar with the process, please refer to the procedures section. There are 2 items we'd like to note specifically regarding this meeting process. These items involve certificates of appropriateness and appeals. Certificates of appropriateness. After an application is approved and the 10-day protest period expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail their certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review, inspection, or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Appeal to Board of Adjustments. Any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a certificate of appropriateness may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Katie, any news from the Office of Historic Preservation Officer?
I just wanted to note we have a number of workshops coming up in the next couple of months. One is a lunch and learn workshop on Wednesday, August 14th. The commission has been invited to this, and we've also reached out to neighborhood representatives. If you are someone who works on historic buildings, you're a homeowner, you're a contractor, you're a design professional, and you would have an interest in attending that, please contact staff. We'd love to have you. We have a regular workshop scheduled for Wednesday, September 11th that we will likely postpone because we have some other workshops coming up after that. One is a hands-on wood window repair workshop that is over the course of a weekend, and then another training that the commission's been invited to on September 20th. So just please take a look at that, contact staff if you have questions, and if you are one of those lucky people that has received an email inviting you to any of these, we would appreciate a response so that we can have a good head count and have food and all of that sort of thing for everybody that's going to attend.
Thank you, Katie. Acceptance of minutes. Next up, have commissioners had a chance to review the minutes from the July 3rd meeting? If so, do we have any questions or perhaps a motion to accept or modify? Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, thank you. I believe we do have an item that we do need to move up on the agenda. It is, let me see here, I had it written down here. It's item C and other business. We will need a motion and a second and a vote by the commission to move that up. And Katie, where would you like that to be bumped to in the agenda?
We can do that right under public hearings.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to move item 7C up to public hearings.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov.
Oh, I did.
Keith, sorry we threw that at you out of nowhere.
Okay, thank you. Next up, code enforcement report.
Nothing in particular to report. As always, if you see any items in the code enforcement report that's attached in your packet, feel free to reach out to staff or contact the Action Center for more information.
Continuance announcements and requests.
We have one new continuance request for HPCA 24-00081 has asked to be continued to the September 4th meeting. We do need a motion and vote on that item.
Okay, commissioners, do we have a motion to continue that item? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Do we get everybody to vote? There we go. Okay, that item has been moved to the September commission hearing. Public hearings.
We have, just first, if anyone was here for 108 Northwest 19th Street in Heritage Hills East, HPCA 24-81, that item has been continued to September 4th. It won't be discussed today, so just to make sure everyone's aware of that, doesn't sit through the whole meeting waiting to be heard. We have no items under dilapidated structures and no National Register nominations, although we'll have a couple of those next month. We have one item under consent docket. Oh, but we're going to move back to, I guess before we do the consent docket, we can do
Yes.
7C.
Yes, okay.
So item 7C is an informational presentation from Public Works Department, Mike Clark, to talk about an upcoming streetscape improvement project that will cut through Jefferson Park and Paseo. So,
Good afternoon. Thank y'all for letting me be here with you today. My name is Mike Clark. I'm with the city's Public Works Department. Katie warned me about the length of your agenda today, so I'm going to try to be really brief. If I don't cover something you need, please let us know, and we'll make sure you get that information back. The city is in the latter planning stages of a streetscape on Walker Avenue from the north side of 23rd Street to the south side of 32nd. It includes most of the elements common to a streetscape project: sidewalks, street lighting, landscaping, that sort of thing. There are two elements that are somewhat unique. Rain gardens are being proposed at the intersection of 28th and 29th. They have infrastructure that allows them to kind of take the first flush of rainfall off the roadway and then dispense it back more slowly into the city's infrastructure system. Visually from the surface, it really will not appear much different than the landscaping that you would see in the recently completed Paseo Street Enhancement Project, but we are hoping that it would at least mitigate some of the flooding that has typically occurred at those two intersections. And then the second item is, rather than advocating for an additional four-way stop on Walker, we will be petitioning adjacent property owners for the use of speed cushions along that segment of Walker. They're part of the city's speed abatement program, and the thought is that they would be appropriate to slow down traffic that perhaps is currently using Walker as a little bit of a cut through. Again, I apologize really fast, but if y'all have any questions, please let me know, and we'll try to get that information back to you.
We have been working with Mike on this and on a number of other streetscape projects throughout our design districts for some time now. And this one will come through eventually for a certificate of appropriateness. It may or may not have to come back to the commission depending on the scope of the changes. We have the ability to administratively approve a lot of work when it comes to sidewalks and that sort of thing, but particularly with the rain gardens, kind of wanted to get that in front of the commission. That's a big change from kind of our typical design features in the area right now, and just make sure you all didn't have any comments or feedback on that at this point. Obviously, you guys can review this from now till it comes back, and if you have any comments that occur to you later on after this meeting, feel free to pass those on to staff, and we'll communicate that back to Public Works.
I walk this often. I'm excited to see the sustainable design efforts to help with the rain mitigation, so this is exciting.
Very pretty.
Yeah, no concerns so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all again very much.
Okay, next up, we've got our consent docket, and it appears we have one item on the consent docket today. That's item HPCA-24-0079. Do we have any commissioners, do we have any questions on this item?
I don't. I would motion to approve the consent docket if nobody else has a question.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve. Do we have a
Second.
second? We've got a second. Commissioners, please cast your votes in PrimeGov. Okay, that item has been approved. If you were on the consent docket, congratulations, your project is approved. You have the option to stick around for the remainder of the meeting, or you can head out at this point. Thank you. Okay, we will start items for individual consideration. We'll be starting with item 1, HPCA-24-0007 at 3233 North Harvey Parkway. Katie, please tell us about this project.
This is in Edgemere Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Brandon Westbury for a certificate of appropriateness to 3, construct attached pergola with cover, fan, and light fixtures, elective. The commission has seen this application twice before. There are no continuances remaining. Several other items were approved, but this has not been approved yet because it has been continued with the request that the attachment from the primary structure be eliminated, that it be a freestanding pergola. We have yet to receive any additional information or revisions related to those comments from the applicant, so we would recommend a denial with prejudice at this time.
Okay, is the applicant present? Are you the applicant? Yep, you may come forward. And please state your name and address.
Brandon Westbury, 3233 North Harvey Parkway.
Okay, thank you, and tell us about the project.
I just wanted to point out, there are 4 talking points that HP brought up, and that is the rear is the most appropriate location, the new pergola shall not be constructed in such a manner that will allow for moisture to accumulate, and that attachment to the wall has the potential to damage the wall, and that a detached pergola will have less adverse effect on the dwelling. For the first one, the pergola is going to be in the backyard, and it will almost be entirely obscured from the street. For specific finding number 2, I want to be very clear. An email sent June 4th at 8:40 p.m. with the attachment titled pergola_specs.docx detailed the method of attachment to not allow moisture to accumulate. Curiously, this attachment has not been included on the docket for this meeting. Considering the current status of the application and the remaining questions from the Commission, this document should have provided the requisite information needed to make a decision. The Commission informed me that this is the final meeting before the Commission votes to approve or deny, with the current suggestion being that this should be a denial with prejudice. However, I don't believe that this is appropriate, as requisite information has apparently not been reviewed by the Commission, despite it being submitted. I have the document with me now, including the email that was sent to the Commission to provide proof that this was sent, as I state. For specific finding number 3, the attachment to the wall has the potential to damage the wall. I would focus back to what I stated for specific finding number 2. Further, if the methods for attachment do not allow for moisture to accumulate, the potential for damage to the wall should be minimal and nearing 0. I did request some type of documentation that could provide guidance as to what specifically the Commission is looking for with regard to appropriate attachment methods, and was told that the Commission could not provide this information. This seems a bit specious, as the Commission is apparently denying the construction based on requirements that they cannot define. This is an incredibly unfair and unreasonable process for homeowners to follow. For specific finding number 4, that a detached pergola will have less adverse effect on the dwelling, I contend that the watertight nature of the construction will prevent any water from accessing the patio under the pergola, thereby improving the durability and lifespan of the patio and improving the overall condition of the property. Thank you.
I am so sorry. I hate to ask this. The echo up here is really bad, and I missed kind of your statement on specific finding number 2 about sending you information.
Yeah. I sent an email June 4th at 8:40 p.m. With an attachment titled pergola_specs.docx. This detailed, with example, the method of attachment in relation to my house and how the pergola was going to attach to the house. Looking at the docket, it has not been included. I submitted that 2 months ago. That should have been the information needed to navigate this process. As far as I understand, the only issue concerning this project at this point is how this pergola is going to connect to the house. And I don't understand why that information was not reviewed.
We don't receive that, so that's a staff question. Katie?
Yeah, I am very sorry that that's not in there. Right at this moment, I can't tell you where that is in my inbox or Angela's inbox. We will certainly address that after the meeting. And look, I'm sorry that we didn't get that incorporated into here. So it must just have been an email that got missed.
So what's our protocol here?
Yeah.
So I think that, the method of attachment is a concern. I think attaching it at all was also a concern, whether it was appropriate for a pergola to be attached, tied in to the house versus just a freestanding structure that's not attached. I think if the commission were to determine that having it attached to the house, generally speaking, is appropriate, it could be approved with a condition that that documentation is submitted to staff and that we work with the applicant to verify that those other concerns about the method of attachment are satisfied. If the commission deems that it's just flat across the board, not appropriate for it to be attached to the house, no matter how that's done, then it could either be denied at this point and the applicant could reapply with a different proposal, or it could be approved with the condition that it be installed freestanding from the house. The applicant would have to agree to that.
So I do think that the main issue for me is it being attached to the house, but that said, I feel pretty uncomfortable voting on it, especially as it's his last continuance, if there's kind of missing. I would not want it to come back on the commission that we voted on something without seeing all of the information. So I don't know quite how to handle that.
Did you say you have copies?
I have a single copy.
Okay.
There was a recommendation that staff view the information, so if you wanted to go that direction, you certainly could. Can you say again what you said previously?
Yeah, I can describe how it's going to hatch as well, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure.
So the connection points would be 2 by 2 by 8 boards side by side, 1 board bolted to the wall, and weather stripping lining the top gap between the board and wall, silicone caulking underneath. The topper will extend over both boards and make contact with the wall. Additional weather stripping and caulking will be adhered to the topper, weatherproofing the gaps between the connection boards and the wall. So that's 4 separate weatherproofing, construction facets to this. The pergola structure will have a 6-inch fall from the connection points on the wall on the east and the front edge of the west for proper runoff. And water will not be able to get through caulking and double weather stripping. I do want to bring up one other point real quick, that in the application, it states that the pergola, in the docket, it states that the pergola is flat and is over 700 square feet. Again, in the application that was submitted in the other documentation, it actually has a 6-inch drop from the east to the west side and is only 442 square feet. Those facts were noted in the application and were communicated via email on February 14th at 5:21 p.m.
There just seem to be some pretty big discrepancies between what we're looking at and what we're supposed to be voting on.
I guess for me, the question is, oh Lord, hold on.
Sorry, guys, we're struggling with our speaker and our echo up here.
Are we comfortable with it being attached? That's the first question. And then if we are, then are we open to exploring the weatherproofing ideas that are apparently missing? But I think, can we all kind of agree or find our commonality on, are we okay with it being attached to the physical house first?
I am not, but I am concerned about issuing a denial under the circumstances without having all of the information in front of me.
I'd love some information from Katie, because what I'm seeing in the staff report appears to apply that the reason why they're typically recommended to be not attached is almost entirely due to the moisture intrusion. Are there other statements in the guidelines other than related directly to moisture intrusion?
I mean, I think the way the guidelines address pergolas is as a freestanding structure. The assumption is that kind of the definition of a pergola is that it is freestanding. They're usually not tied in and structurally supported by the primary structure. We have language in the guidelines not specific to pergolas, but that basically says anything that is permanently attached to the house shall be reviewed as an addition. So, you know, a freestanding wood landscape feature like a pergola, like a trellis, like a little gazebo is kind of a different animal than an addition. And then I think just general preservation best practices, you want to avoid, unless absolutely necessary, cutting in, penetrating, impacting the exterior wall of the historic structure. So when we see something like a pergola, it's typically quite feasible for it to be self-supporting and not attached to the house.
How close could it be to the house? Like if it was freestanding?
If it was freestanding, I don't have an exact dimension for you, but I think generally those kinds of things can be right up next to the house as long as it's not touching and it's freestanding, because it's an open air structure. There's not a wall there.
No.
Are you open to a freestanding structure?
I want to get it as close as possible. I want it to be completely watertight. Like, I don't want water ingressing in because we're going to have potentially have electronics and things like that that will be on the pergola. That's the whole point of me wanting to attach to the house. I want it to be completely watertight, which I feel like we've done a really good job of, you know, planning for. And if there are other guidelines that you can provide, I mean, I can provide it to my contractor and have him build it to whatever specification, but I haven't been provided a specification. And that's kind of, I think, my biggest issue right now is like, I'll build it with diamonds if you want me to. Like, I just need to know how to build it.
So yeah, I think for staff, if the commission is comfortable with it being attached, it could be approved with that condition that that documentation be submitted to staff. We can work with the applicant on making sure that that's being done appropriately.
I have a question. You said that if we gave you the specs of how it should be built, you give that contractor to have it built, but the specs, the guidelines say it shouldn't be attached.
I mean, if it is it's an addition, I mean, you can build an addition, correct? So why would that apply?
Okay, so you're requesting an addition, not a pergola.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
So we need to look
that's
at
the way
it
that
under
it has been
guidelines
explained to me.
need to look at it as a guidelines under an addition and not a pergola.
I think he's saying if the only defining feature is the attachment between an addition and pergola has a lower standard to be approved generally, he's willing to accept the higher standard to be able to have the water tightness.
Exactly, yes.
Now, we can't probably approve it today as an addition because it wasn't submitted as one.
What is the roof material?
It's going to be a polycarbonate, like, I hesitate to say plastic, but it will be a weather shielding. It's within it's like a Hercules system. I don't know the best way to describe it.
Did we already address that part? I can't remember.
It's in the application. It's in the docket. You can review it.
So I think that would definitely have to be an addition because we haven't allowed that application on pergolas.
That's why I was wondering, because we don't approve that either.
We've denied every single pergola that has any kind of
Yeah, a roof.
polycarbonate or acrylic covering. So what's the path forward if it does have to be reviewed as an addition? Is that just a new application?
And I think we would have to deny with prejudice, and it would be a new application
I mean,
under the guidelines of an addition.
To my understanding, Angela was treating this as an addition, not a pergola.
She was what?
Treating this as an addition
Yeah,
and not
I
a
think we
pergola.
do have guidelines in here guidelines in the staff report are relative to pergolas as well as additions. And the staff report does address that it has a solid roof proposed and that those are typically not supported by the guidelines. So I think the primary issue that has come up at previous meetings and that we've continued it in order to address was the attachment versus not being attached. But these other issues have been called out in the staff report previously as well.
I also feel like this is going to get us on a slippery slope where people are like, okay, it's not a pergola. We'll make sure it's physically attached to the wall. And now we can put our cover on top and call it an addition. And I don't know if that's really our goal.
I mean, that's been the way that it's been described to me by the commission.
But we wouldn't approve this roof type for an addition either. So the roof, regardless, the roof is problematic for the guidelines, whether it's an addition or it's a pergola.
Can I ask why I was forced to submit all this information then, when it was going to be denied anyway? I mean, that seems like a waste of time for every party involved, doesn't it?
Has the roof, have we called, I was not here for the July meeting, so has the roof been in every staff report for each of these application, each continuance appearance?
I believe this same language has been in the staff report each time. I don't believe we had an applicant at the previous,
Yeah, this is the first time I've been able to make it.
so,
Yeah, because I was trying to find in the history where we'd had the conversation before, because I don't remember us.
right, yes. This is the first time the applicant has been before the commission. So
Okay.
we haven't had the opportunity to have this conversation about the design, the appearance, the materials of
So
the
the CA's
structure.
been before us 3 times, this is the first time the applicants come.
Right.
Okay.
So if the language regarding, the guidelines, interpretation of roofing elements that are appropriate for pergolas has been in the staff report every time that the applicant has received, I would feel comfortable denying with prejudice and just, getting an application with, we just don't support covered pergolas.
But this is an addition. You keep calling it, the commission keeps calling this an
We
addition.
don't support this roof type as an addition. And that is in the
That should
guidelines.
have been communicated months ago.
But it is in the guidelines, which are communicated.
You weren't here months ago. You've missed
I
2
mean,
meetings, so
I mean,
it's hard for us to communicate to you.
Email is an appropriate form of communication.
Well,
So
it's
the-
communicated by virtue of being a part of the guidelines.
The staff report says, as a pergola, the feature is large, very large compared to historic pergolas. As an addition, the structure is less than 50% of the footprint of the dwelling and less than 750 square feet. Additions by nature obscure or remove existing fabric. However, standard construction methods of additions with typical roofs must meet building code requirements and generally include appropriate structural support, flashing, drainage. Sorry, I started reading in the wrong spot. Pergolas are open-air structures that provide for vines and shade via the beams and joists. These are typically composed of wood. Overall, the proposal is a pergola. However, the introduction of polycarbonate roofing material transitions the proposal to either an accessory structure, detached, or an addition. As previously noted, polys, plastics, and vinyls, though having longevity and resistance to fire, are hazardous in production, So there's there's lengthy discussion in the staff report about concerns with the roof material, concerns with the attachment, concerns with whether or not it's an addition or an accessory structure. We haven't had these conversations because we haven't had an applicant present at the meeting, and when there's not an applicant, the
I
commission
vehemently
doesn't
disagree
discuss
that
it.
I need to physically be here to be informed of these things. This is literally the first time that I've heard about the roofing issue. I can take the roof out if you want me to. Sorry, I'm getting frustrated, but.
I also want to clarify that, generally applicants work with staff. Staff can't make approvals for everything, so that's when they come before us for approval. And our first opportunity to really have a dialogue and have communication is when your application is on our agenda. So we don't have any back and forth opportunity. We don't pre-meet with staff on each item. This is our one opportunity to ask questions and to get clarification. So just want to put that out there as a clarifying thing that you keep referring to. Why did you guys give me this direction? I don't think any applicant or any of the HP Commission has provided any direction to you. So this is
Understood.
our first time to have this dialogue.
So regardless, this item has to be voted on today, correct?
Right, we have to either
But
approve it
we're
or
going
deny
to figure
it.
out how to vote on this. I guess we need to give the applicant direction today of how does this item come back?
So, right, yep.
you know, is it being viewed? I think we just need to be very clear
Agreed.
with the applicant today.
Yeah.
I don't
of,
want
is
them
this
to
coming
submit-
back as a pergola? Is this coming back as an addition? Because I understand you're saying addition, but the language on my agenda says pergola. So I just, in respect to you, I just want to make sure we get the right information to the applicant today of what next steps would be on
Agree.
what our vote would be and what the applicant's next steps needs to be.
And I think it's worthwhile communicating the potential challenges of if it comes back as a structure, what
Like
those
an
challenges,
addition.
addition, yes, what those
Yeah.
challenges may be, because I don't want to give any false hope
Yeah.
that they will get approved if it comes back with that wording.
Yeah.
So in addition to the roof, what would be the big concern if this were submitted as an addition? Can you submit a totally open-air structure as an addition? Would it
I mean,
require
I
a
think
different
it's
kind of
kind
roof?
The proposal to add a porch on the back of a house where there is not currently a porch, or to expand a porch.
And usually we look at appropriate roofing materials
Right,
for
we're gonna
that,
look at building
that are
materials, we're gonna look at
comparable,
compatibility with
appropriate
the
for the-
historic
yeah.
structure, that sort of thing.
I think a detail of the attachment method would help as well, just so the commission is comfortable with, preventing any moisture or water intrusion as well.
But anything that was likely to be approved, even far in the future, would be a radically different design, most likely than what we're seeing today, is that correct? I mean, not-
It's hard, it's, you know, I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry.
I think you could get the commission on board today if it weren't attached fully,
I mean, I can do that.
And
I just
it
need to know how
didn't
far to move
have-
it away from the house.
the cover on it.
Have you had an engineer look at this at all, or size columns, or like how have you got to design?
Yeah, our contractor has provided blueprints and things like that, where columns are going to be, how many there need to be.
I think you could get as close to the structure as you want, just as long as there is, minimal room for your structure to move and not do any damage to the house. So if your contractor is able to, calculate what that is, I would
Yeah,
say
I don't know the exact mile per hour winds, but they've said that it's like 135 miles an hour or something that it will withstand. It might even be higher than that.
Okay, yeah,
I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but like it's not supposed to move unless a tornado comes through or something, which in that case, I don't care about the pergola.
everything moves slightly, but that's just the nature of,
Houses breathe.
yeah. Yes,
So
and
what I
ground settle.
will-
So I think, I was just gonna say, as long as, keep it as close as you want, as long as there's just like minimal room for it to not bang up against the house. But I think that would,
I believe that we approved a pergola very, very close to a structure in Mesta Park in the past year or so. Then, I mean, I think it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
3 inches maybe.
So what I will say is that we could, if we can come to an agreement on something to approve today, and you go home and you sleep on it and you think, I really don't want to do that, we can come back with a revision to what was approved today. And you can, and sometimes that's something that staff can just do a revision, sometimes it's something that has to come back to the commission. But if we can get to a place where everybody can agree on something to approve, then we can go forward and work with you to get to where we're all on the
That's
same
fair.
page.
That's fair.
And so we've talked about it can attach to the house. Now we just need to address the roof.
Right.
It can't be that solid roof,
Right.
correct? As a pergola, because
Right.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page. We're gonna maybe propose this as a pergola.
Right.
Then, correct, non-addition, because it's not going to attach, and a non-solid roof.
Right.
Can you give a couple examples of what would be acceptable in pergola language? Is it just
So it's just,
wood
a
slats
pergola is,
or-
yeah, is open air.
Open
It's-
air.
Does not have a solid
Okay.
roof on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's, pardon my question here, but if it's open air, why does it matter how it attaches to the house?
Well, you
Since
have brickwork supporting it, right? Or am I looking at this
It's
incorrectly?
brickwork underneath a wood veneer.
a pergola is defined as freestanding. That's It's really all it is. As soon as it attaches to the house, it's an addition.
Okay.
Similar to how a porch is open air, but it's still attached to the house. So can we, if we vote to approve this with conditions being that it would be freestanding and he would, not have a solid roof, is that something that he can get with you on?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, is the commission comfortable moving forward with that? Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
So can we get a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve EA 2400007 with the conditions that the applicant works with staff to show the pergola as freestanding and to remove the roofing material as stated in the application.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Commissioners, please cast your votes in PrimeGov. Okay, that item has been approved with conditions.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have number 2, HPCA-24-00032 at 704 Northwest 28th Street. Katie, tell us about this project.
This is Paseo Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Tuan Tran for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace all windows required, 4, paint brick at front of dwelling required, and 5, paint brick porch components required. This has also been heard twice previously by the commission. The applicant has indicated to staff that they would like either a denial without prejudice or to withdraw, and to be, so they could continue to work with staff to respond to the comments made at previous meetings and come back with a new application. So I think we can just record that in the record as a withdrawn application.
Because the applicant is not here today, correct?
That is my understanding. I wanted to make sure there wasn't anyone here who wanted to speak on it, or that if the applicant was present. But no.
Okay, moving along to number 3, HPCA-24-00044 at 225 Northwest 27th Street.
This is Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Efren Larea, 16164 Northwestern Avenue for Maria Claraval for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct addition to portico share required. This is another one that has been heard by the commission twice previously. Additional information, revisions to the proposed design were requested at previous meetings. No new information has been provided at this time. Staff did recommend a denial with prejudice.
Okay, is the applicant present, excuse me?
Yes, my name is Efren Luria.
Okay, and your address?
It's 225 or 27th Street.
Okay, great. Tell us about your project.
Yeah, that's the project. We're planning to just extend that carports to the back side, and we're hoping, I don't know what look like, we're trying to kind of make sure that we match everything, that addition also. So hopeful, I'm not sure if something that we can do or not. Something we can.
Well, I think that it's not supported by the guidelines, and I know we've seen it a few times before, and it doesn't seem like any of the requested changes have been made or submitted, so staff is recommending a denial today. I mean, without any of the changes being
So we
implemented.
can't. So basically, there's no way for us to kind of do that addition to the
So a denial with prejudice would mean that you cannot resubmit this application exactly as it is. You would have to change the plans. Hopefully, based on what the feedback from the commission and staff has been, and resubmit another application that differs from this one.
I think one of our issues with this application that we talked about in the last meeting is, it's attachment to the house, and then B, it just felt a little long. So that was, I think, a couple of the things we had asked you to think about or see if there's a way to revise. And I don't know, since we haven't seen any revisions, I think it would be hard to approve this, but if you came back with those changes or worked with staff to find a way to make it, freestanding and not quite as long or whatever other comments the commission had during last meeting, then I think there would be possibly a way forward. But today, I think that would be hard.
I agree.
So for the applicant to come back
So-
and revise, it would need to be a denial without?
So,
With.
denial without prejudice means he could turn around tomorrow and submit this exact same application. I think based on the discussion that's happened at previous meetings, that's not a worthwhile pursuit. Denial with prejudice means they can reapply at any time so long as it is a new proposal. It's different from what has already been before you.
Okay.
In order to resubmit this exact same thing, the applicant would have to wait a year.
Well, then I think I would motion to deny HPCA 24-00044 with prejudice and citing the specific findings in the staff report.
Commissioners, please cast your votes in PrimeGov. Okay, that item has been denied. Okay, next up, number 4, HPCA-24-00060 at 315 Northwest 26th Street.
This is Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Juan Meza for Kirsten Scott, Over the Top Roofing and Construction LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace roof required, 2, replace siding required, and 3, replace windows required. This is work that has already been initiated, but must be reviewed as if it had not yet been done. What I will tell you is that the work that you see that has been completed in the photos is not what they are now proposing. They have proposed some changes to that to try to bring it into compliance, but there are still some outstanding issues with various materials that are proposed that do not meet the guidelines, so staff has recommended a continuance. Some of these items, if we can get the materials right, would likely be administratively approvable, but they were not in a place at this time where staff could recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present? Okay, commissioners, do we have any comments or questions on this item?
I mean, the bottom line is we're still missing way too much information. So even if the applicant were here, I don't think there's really a path forward for, I mean, there's 13 specific findings. So I think, I will say, the staff report says to continue them without prejudice. Oh, that might be, that's, okay.
Are out of town.
We're having so many issues with this today.
That's interesting. They are out of town. Unfortunately, they had someone set up to attend today, and that person has obviously not made it here. They're not sure how long they'll be out of town, so if you continue it, I would recommend the full 60 if possible.
Okay.
For October.
I would feel comfortable continuing it to October 2nd. And hopefully staff can work with the applicant to get some clarity on these, on the lacking information in the meantime. So I motion to continue HPCA 24-00060, items 1, 2, and 3 to the October 2nd HP meeting.
Okay, we've got a motion to continue. Do we have a second? We've got a second. Commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that item has been continued. Okay, next up, item 5, HPCA-24-00066 at 419 Northwest 25th Street.
This is Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration of possible action on application by Fallon Brooke Magnus, Jollybird Design, for David DeWitt for certificate of appropriateness to 11 rebuild porch roof elective. The commission saw this application previously. Most other items were approved. but this was continued so that they could do kind of a redesign on the construction of the porch roof, addressing some water issues that were of concern. They have provided those revised designs, and staff has recommended approval. I don't think we had any conditions. Sorry,
So I'm gonna throw a wrench at you.
oh,
I'm so sorry. I know, I want this off my desk more than anyone. So,
Okay, state your name.
sorry,
and
Fallon
address.
Brooks Magnus,
Yep,
Jolly
yep.
Bird Design,
Thank you.
733 Northwest 20.
I'm sorry, Katie, were you done? Did you? Okay, okay. I'm done. I'm done interrupting you.
You're done?
Okay, thanks.
Jeez, John, okay.
I'm sorry.
No, okay, so I got some photo documentation that shows that the roof that we tore off for the porch was not original. So the house, if you go back one image, that house right there to the east, the roof line for this one was very similar. And there's evidence of that up underneath the soffits in the porch. I don't have those, obviously, and we can't submit new documentation, so we'll have to come back next month. So I'm not expecting anything today but a continuance, but I wanted to discuss that and discuss the possibility of, because I don't think that the plan is to put back what the original was. So I think the question is, if we didn't, what we removed was not original, is there a path to being able to leave in place what has been built because what we removed was also not original? That's one question. And then the other issue was the chimney, which was brought up by staff, and I didn't notice. They pulled the wool over my eyes on this one, didn't see it happen. So we have some documentation for the chimney as well, but I wanted to kind of ask a few questions about what the path forward on the chimney situation is as well. Are we going to be required to build it back, or if we show documentation showing that it was unsupported inside the house, and that's why it ultimately fell. So I just kind of want some opinions and a continuance.
So when was the last time that what you believe to be the original roof structure was on the home? When was the last time it looked like that?
No idea. We don't have any photos of it. We have photos of the evidence that we found in the facade, but
Does staff
not.
have any photos that have indicated just my 2 cents, but that seems like a real slippery slope to require people to, come before us, get permission for something we think it's supposed to be, and then, dig into their home and, they didn't buy it looking like that. They had no idea it was like that. That just seems, that seems like a financial burden that is really unfair to put on people.
And the argument would be, so I was personally a little bit surprised with how the roof was built before, because it was a bad design. Water got up under there, ice, everything, and it caused a lot of rot along the front wall of the house that had to be repaired. And so what they have built here, and I did not design this, I'm gonna be very clear. What they've built in the field was to alleviate that drainage problem, which was a poor design previously. So that's my argument on it.
I just don't know how we could expect people to tear into their houses and figure this stuff out before coming to see us. If you came and you said, I want to change the roof form because I have discovered that this was the original form, I think I would be totally on board with supporting that, but I don't. As somebody who's always tearing into their house, that idea terrifies me, that I might have to put it back in a way in which I never knew it existed.
The guidelines actually do say that when we know what the historic condition was, that's what you're required to go back to. And I think the problem here is that the roof was already altered in a way that was not approved to begin with. So had they put it back the way it was originally, we would never have said, oh, well, we think you really should go up and down the block and tear all the framing out and see if it might have had a dormer before. That conversation would not have happened. But now we're in a position where not only does it not match the previously presumed historic condition, but it also doesn't match what we now know was actually the historic condition. So to then let them go forward with, yet another option that doesn't match either, that feels problematic to me.
So this doesn't match what was on there a year ago.
Right.
Sorry, I have a question about reverting back to what we now know as the historic condition. Fallon, is your, proof of that or whatever, did you just see where there was like roof framing into,
Yeah, you can
like,
see
that
where
was
the
the
roof
slope of the roof
framing
here.
was against the facade of the original siding that is also now gone, but we do have photos of it, so you
Right.
can see where that was. I don't know that there was a dormer like there was in the house next door, but there definitely was
Sure.
probably a similar hip roof or something.
So my question for Katie is, if, we know that there was some kind of roof there similar to what was next door, but we don't know what it actually looked like, how far it extended out, what the slope was. Like, how do we tell her to go back to the historic condition when we don't actually truly know what it was?
It's hard to say without kind of seeing what they have to go on. I mean, I think we know what the basic configuration was of it prior to this version. We know what other houses on the block and of the same era look like. We would presumably be able to make some guesses from what they've been able to discover in the framing and that sort of thing. But then I think it comes down to which version of the roof is the most, because we have to remember, we're reviewing the rebuilding of the porch roof as if it had not yet occurred.
Right.
They're asking to rebuild the porch roof, and we're considering which of these versions is the right one to approve. So you have to kind of take out of your mind from a work already completed standpoint, what's there now. So I think with a continuance, we would work with Fallon to see what evidence they have and figure out what the right path is as far as what we know about the house at various points.
But is one of your questions is what was proposed before, which was approved and proposed and approved, that didn't get built, right?
Actually, nothing was ever approved. Nothing
Right.
was ever proposed.
Nothing was ever
They just
approved
did
originally.
it without a CA. And then they came back.
This was done in the field by the contractor. Didn't understand that you have to have approval and all that, so he built it this way, and then I never noticed because I've been on other projects and, so let me
I couldn't
ask-
remember if it was proposed a different way and it was built this way in the field or
Yeah,
not.
no,
but
this
yes, okay.
this was the way it was built, and we are in trouble for it.
What was the rationale behind not mimicking what was there when the roof was
It was
replaced?
a drainage problem. It was a real bad design, and there's, in the packet that you guys have, there's a new detail where we've proposed an alternative that keeps that same look, but it solves the drainage problem. We put blocking in there and made the reveal a lot shallower so that we're not gonna get, ice buildup and everything like that behind it. So that's really, we came to have that approved, but then, someone points out to me that this wasn't the original configuration either, so.
So then is your question that since you discovered that the original porch is not what was removed, can I please keep what I've already done? Is that what we're asking?
That's what my client
That's what
is
you've been
asking,
told to
yes.
ask?
Yes.
Okay, well, because I think we're not going to approve that.
yeah,
So
okay.
would you I mean, I'm not speaking for the rest of the council, but I would assume that would be unlikely. In the event that that is not going to happen, would your preference be that we approve what you were just almost to the finish line for, or would you like to go back and review?
I think it's, obviously, we're gonna get a continuance today anyway, so I think it's worth discussing with staff and kind of looking at some alternatives and coming up with the best design. That's what I would like to do. I think that what I detailed and put in my packet is probably the best way to do it while maintaining the previous look. Personally, I don't think we should go back to the historic condition because we have no proof of what it really looked like. So I'm cool to go back to what we proposed here. But then I also wanted some guidance on the chimney situation. Curious what the commission thinks about the chimney and what we should do about it as well, so. Those are the two things.
So
I
the
want.
chimney was taken off when this roof was constructed?
It collapsed,
I mean,
yeah.
there's the before. I think you've got to have one.
Gotta have it.
I mean, my opinion is that it's got to go
Yes.
back.
Historic
It's a
to the house,
defining
yeah.
element of the historic structure. Just my 2 cents.
I agree.
But I do think guidelines, definitions, you know, it is a defining feature.
Doesn't have to function.
But we've had numerous applicants get really creative on how to have a chimney that is not supported by anything. So,
Yeah,
and we
it
don't
wasn't
review
connected to
the,
anything, not support, it was just hanging
Yeah.
in the rafters. And so,
Well, we
Not
don't
do
even
that
know
detail,
that.
but you don't have to take it all the way to the ground.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So
Okay,
so obviously, we're going to continue.
yeah, I just
These items today,
needed a little
okay.
bit of guidance from you guys, so
Okay.
so September 4th or October 2nd.
let's go ahead and do September 4th. Okay, I'll get it, I promise I'll get it in this time.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion to continue HPCA 24-00066 to the September 4th meeting.
Okay, we've got a motion to continue this item. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a second. Commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that item has been continued to the September commission meeting. Thank you. Oh, there we go. Yes, continue. Okay. Okay. Next up is item 6, HPCA-24-00068 at 709 Northwest 42nd Street.
This is Crown Heights, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architecture for Michael Rubenstein for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace all windows, elective. This commission saw this once previously and continued it with the request that additional documentation of the condition of the windows be provided, among other discussion that was had. The applicant has submitted additional documentation of the windows. Staff did note we still don't appear to have any photos of the exterior of the windows. They all have storm windows on them. That was something that was discussed in the previous meeting. The applicant did communicate with staff about some of the comments in the staff report regarding the glass and our requirements for visible light transmittance and reflectivity. We don't talk about that a whole lot in the meetings, but those are metrics that impact the extent to which the glass looks clear and looks colorless, as opposed to being very reflective and green, purple, blue. And the applicant did say they were happy to work with the manufacturer and make sure that the glass met all of those requirements. But I think the main thing before the commission is the condition of the existing windows and whether or not they warrant replacement.
Okay. Is the applicant present?
Hello, Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architects, 400 Northwest 23rd Street.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Yes, I will say, and this is some mention in the staff report that is kind of irksome because I wish I'd known that, yeah, there's storm windows on it. I remember us talking in the meeting last month that, yes, they impair your ability to see the exterior of the windows. It was not brought to my attention that we should therefore take off all the storm windows and then bring that to this meeting. That I guess I misinterpreted if that was said. Yes, the storm windows do make it difficult to see the exterior, but if you look, especially in the newest submission, you can see through the storm window glass and see that the windows have the same type of rippling, shrinking, cracking that we see on the interior side of the window. I think it's safe to say that when you look at the interior damage of any window, that the exterior is experiencing the same kind of damage. It's coming from the outside, right? The rain, the water is coming from the exterior, and it's going all the way through that wood, all the way through the window in order to damage the interior walls, in order to damage the interior finish of the windows, to crack the glass, to shrink the glazing of all of these windows, all of which we see in this photo survey. So, you know, I hope it doesn't come to that. But obviously these storm windows are failing to preserve these windows any further. And the damage is not only gone beyond 50%, I would estimate that 3/4 of every window would need to be replaced as a restoration if that was the route. Today, we just want to reiterate that 50% or more of the windows would need to be new in order to be restored, and that's grounds for replacement. We've provided tons of photo evidence of that. I mean, I'm happy to go. I think sometimes it's hard for you all that maybe don't work in construction to really pinpoint the evidence of water infiltration, but it's not just, one thing I really quickly want to reiterate, because we see a lot of cracking along the windows on the interiors in these window surveys, that there's no foundation issues on this house. We have no cracking anywhere except around the windows. There's no foundation issues present. There's no cracking of the interior original stucco, which is stucco over wood lath. It takes a great force to move that stuff, especially after it's been sitting there for 100 years. The house has settled nicely. Its foundation hasn't lost any integrity. So where we're seeing these failures are specifically around the rough openings of all of these windows. And I want to reemphasize that because these telltale signs are there, but I don't know that you're maybe giving the weight to them that they deserve when you look at these pictures. It's hard to, I mean, I wish you could be there and put hands on them to feel the softness of the wood. But things I wanted to point out in these pictures is when you see splitting and separation, these are clear signs of failure of the wood windows. That just means that the material itself has like reached a level of decay that it is either shrinking, some of that material is like actually being lost to decay. And that's evident in many, actually on all four sides of the home. One other thing I want to point out, which was brought up in the last meeting, but not all of you were there. This house is a little unique. A lot of these elder homes have large overhangs. We have almost no overhang on this house. So these exterior walls are beat down with Oklahoma weather, and that contributes to this further water infiltration, which leads to this type of deterioration of the wood windows. So yes, I mean, I feel like there's two parts, and I'd be happy at this junction to talk about deterioration of the windows further. Or we could, I guess I'll go ahead and touch on the second part, which is us, the suggested window specs, or I'm sorry, the submitted window specs. If I'd have known that number, that 0.74, I would have never brought that, or never submitted that otherwise. We will meet that criteria. I've already spoken with staff. We can meet that. We've talked with the window company. They can meet that requirement, so that is absolutely no problem. That's something we can handle as a condition of approval, should you feel like that's appropriate. So there's no issues there. But also in this submission for this month, I submitted the window specs along with those Muntin profiles that show that in order to do a thermal pane window, you really can't achieve matching the existing Muntins with true divided light today with a thermal pane window. They require at least 1.25 inches in order for those Muntins to exist. So we are hopeful. And I think there's also some confusion in the staff report. We've submitted options for both true wood windows throughout and also wood windows that are aluminum clad throughout. And we did that just to cover all of our bases so that we don't have this issue again, like saying that we're not submitting full window documentation. We are prepared to go with whichever the commission feels is most appropriate. We truly feel like aluminum clad windows are the superior move forward in this district, matching that historic, layout. The 3.6.9 talks about shall match the characteristics of the historic windows, including the Muntin profile and pattern. So we can only achieve that with a thermal pane with a simulated divided light. But it is a superior window and doesn't require a storm window. I feel like even now, the storm windows are obscuring the vision of the historic windows as it is now. So we're proposing a more superior, modern building material, these aluminum-clad wood windows, as a way to emulate and preserve the look of the original historic home as closely as possible. And that's our goal. I'm happy to
Commissioners,
field
what-
any questions.
Commissioner, what questions do you have for the applicant?
I did bring along today the contractors for this and the homeowner, and they're happy to field any questions specific to them. And I don't know if any of them would like to speak as well?
Why don't we go through our questions first?
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
commissioners.
I do think that we're qualified to look at wood windows and determine deterioration and identify water encroachment versus structural movement. I mean,
I didn't
that's,
say you weren't
well, I
qualified.
mean, that's what like this is for everybody to determine. We understand that there's differences in it. So, I mean, to me, it just comes down to there hasn't been enough documentation for staff to feel like they've seen everything they need to see. I mean, that's all that's in here, really.
Well, what's interesting is last month we were actually recommended for approval, and I think this time the only thing that shifted was that visible light transmittance, which again is something we can correct. We've brought more evidence this time, I feel like, and now it's kind of a different tune. So is the recommendation then to remove all the storm windows and then survey the exterior of the windows? Was that one?
Recommended for approval,
Last month.
not by us.
I think,
wouldn't
I
be-
It
think
was
the
in the
staff,
staff
I think the
report.
staff report did
Right.
say recommend approval with kind of the caveat that, you know, based on the commission determining that the windows were deteriorated more than 50% beyond repair. So we were kind of leaving that in you all's court to either agree with that or to ask for more information.
And then basically, I wasn't
And then
here in
based on
July,
the
so-
conversation that happened last month and the additional documentation that was requested by the commission, we did change that recommendation to a continuance.
Because you didn't receive any further information.
We did get many additional photos from the
lot of
applicant.
additional
We still don't have the exterior of the windows with the storms removed. So I'm sorry if.
I
that
wasn't aware that you guys were requesting us to remove the storm windows. That was not like made clear to me in the last meeting. We talked about how the storm windows made it difficult to see the exterior damage to the windows. And that's when I was talking about, you know, if it's seeped through the windows to the interior, that's usually a clear sign that there's damage also to the exterior. And especially in this that I submitted for this meeting, you know, in these larger format photos, I can clearly see through those storm windows the same type of damage that we're seeing on the interior, where we have, you know, shrinking, expansion, cracking, splitting. And the way that these windows are built, you can't just replace one sash, you know, or if there's a damage to a sash, you can't just like cut that sash in half and repair that 2-inch, you know, the whole sash would have to be removed. And so I think that that's my point is, you know, there's enough damage that enough pieces of the window would have to be new that we're over that 50% margin.
Did staff request pictures of the actual exteriors of the window? That's, I think, where the confusion is, you know, what's being considered the exterior with a storm window on, or the exterior of the wood
I
window?
mean, I'm finding out now with the staff report, but I didn't know
I
that
would
was
say
a
that our
request.
application packet has an entire page specifically describing window replacement documentation that talks about full documentation of every window that is proposed to be replaced. And I can't tell you word for word what that says right now, but, you know, I think it's pretty clear that for every single window you're going to replace, we need to see the full condition of that window in order to verify that it warrants replacement, which, I'm sorry that was, I
will say, the only other full window replacement I've done didn't have storm windows, so it was a bit easier to document. It's kind of difficult to ask your homeowner who doesn't really know what the outcome will be to remove all these storm windows, creating further damage and infiltration to their home through water and weather damage. Not to mention, like, you know, the expanse of utility costs in August when we don't really know what the outcome will be. I feel that there's enough evidence here to show that 50% or more of these windows would need to be replaced, and that the water infiltration is evident and they're 100-year-old windows. So we at some point, we have to kind of interpolate the damage by these telltale signs. And that was my hope, is just further photographing, further bringing up these telltale signs that would become evident.
And like last meeting, I still struggle with the thought that all windows are beyond repair with 50% damage. I realize it's the path of least resistance, but I'm sure there's some that could be preserved and restored. It does take time, but it's possible. So that's where my hang up is.
I have a little bit of an issue with that, because I think if you're getting into where you're going to replace half of the windows in a house and have half the windows in a house that are 100 years old, I mean, we're getting into aesthetics here, functionality, some issues.
Some have to maintain storm windows, some do not.
Yeah, I mean, I would have appreciated it if you would have presented what staff had asked last time, because you're here all the time, you know.
I don't feel that was a clear request.
Okay.
Well, we did talk about last time that we wanted a full picture of every window because there were a lot of close-ups of damage last time, but it's, for all we know, those could all have been from the same window.
Wall by wall, window by window. I mean,
I mean, it sounds like we can probably all get there with the proper documentation, right? Like, I mean, if they are this deteriorated, I think,
Yeah,
I agree with
I don't have
Patrick.
a problem with the request. I think that I don't disagree with you that there comes a time where a 100-year-old window has its life. I don't want to see mixed match of rebuilt window, old window, this and that, when you're putting in very quality windows to make it as good as we can get to the original. So I don't have a problem with that. So I'm probably okay with it if we had, and I'm personally okay with the documentation we have, but normally it would be better to have it on the outside. That's my position. I'll let the
Well,
rest
Commissioner
of
Haynes, I will tell you another aspect we talked about that was brought to this, for this meeting was the window specs, the Muntin details, the description of simulated versus true divided. All of that was, I think, a bigger part of the conversation than the storm windows being removed. That, I guess, I did not, that to me was not a request. That was just a conversation. So maybe that's on me, but what I brought was, I thought, fully bringing what was requested, just so you know.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question for staff. If the commission was on board with the proposed window spec, assuming she updated the, glazing type and all that, and would she be able to work with staff to provide additional documentation, or would that, or like for the deterioration, or would that have to come back through commission?
I think it would just depend on what that additional documentation is. I think what staff has seen to this point, we are not convinced that every window in this house is more than 50% beyond repair. Now, if we got photos of the exteriors without the storms and they were just, dramatically worse off than what we're seeing here, or if we got other documentation of some sort that convinced us that, yes, we really do think on every single window in every single case they're 50% beyond repair, then that's, theoretically something that could be deferred to staff. But generally, that is something that we leave to the commission to evaluate.
Okay. And I'm sorry, was there somebody else that wanted to speak on this item?
Any of you? Get up here, Miles. Miles Mixon, everyone.
And please state your name and address for the record.
Miles Mixon, 515 Northwest 42nd Street. Hello all.
Hello.
So I've reviewed this and I've looked over these windows. I have a lot of concerns because just outside even the windows, the trim between the windows on like the twin windows on the sides is completely deteriorated. I think, you know, we place a lot of emphasis on the exterior of these windows, and I just did a full restoration on about 14 windows myself. There's a lot of, you know, major deterioration on the exterior, and on top of just being, you know, the photos, I can provide you guys photos, but the problem with the photos is someone also has done a very, very bad job of trying to remediate some of the rot, where there's points on these, like if you look at it from afar, or maybe if I show you a photo in here, you're not gonna be able to see like where there's a giant rot spot where I could take an ice pick and poke through the window, because someone's taken latex caulking and like smeared it in there, like done a decent job, but basically the stiles, the rails, the sashes are gone. They've got big bows in them. If you go inside, all the sash cords, you know, they're toast. So then I'm gonna be like pulling all the interior window trim around the windows, like they have like an apron style and a, you know, a nice sill, but that's gonna, we're talking, I don't even get into the subject now of like, we have restoration companies, we all know that. You guys have talked to some of them here. If you call these companies right now, it's like you're looking at like months before this gets remediated. So we're trying to just find like a practical solution here. And I just think this problem is gonna get worse as we move forward. And it's like, in my opinion, and I think most people, a lot of you guys know me here, I definitely have certain, you know, I think I have a nice aesthetic of things I like and what I look at in these historic neighborhoods. And I would say I'd much rather see a house with nice clad windows that literally the only way I'm gonna be able to tell if it's clad or wood is if I walk up to it and literally touch it with my fingernail, versus seeing a house with a bunch of, you know, not so nice looking aluminum, anodized aluminum, you know, double hung window screens with screen material with holes all in it.
So here's the thing, I don't disagree with any of that, and I think Patrick made a really good point that eventually things do live out their lifespan, and these guys have lived a long life. But, I mean, is there any doubt in your mind that every one of those windows is like?
I think Holly was correct on this, and even on new windows, wood windows particularly, we've, you know, I've had to eat a lot of bills over the years where I put a new clad wood window, new, that was approved here, even patio doors where there's no exposure, there's no coverage to protect that window from driving rain. So you have a house like this that has no eave, nothing to protect the window, and it's just gonna, you know, it's just gonna get worse. I'm afraid if we go back with, you know, I think it's gonna have to be some type of clad material.
I mean, I don't know that anybody here's in total, I mean, I don't know that there's going to be a huge argument if these are proved to be deteriorated. I think just like windows are such a slippery slope because there's so many bad products out there and there's so many people doing them also without CAs, so we have to be doubly careful up here of how we're approving things. So to me, I mean, it's a no-brainer that if we get all the documentation and everything, you know, is deteriorated to the extent that we're being told it's deteriorated, to me it's a no-brainer to put in really nice new windows that are appropriate. It just feels like if it's being asked for.
Yeah, and I agree with you on, you know, the additional documentation. I'm more than happy to get that in here, but I'm afraid if I don't go in here and shoot this in a super high resolution camera and we zoom in on it, you're looking on a piece of paper, you're not gonna be able to determine like, oh, that's, because you're gonna look at it, like I said, good from far, far from good. You're gonna get up on it. If I go walk around this house and start poking around it with an ice pick, and that's kind of what's happening. It's just been a lot of really bad
video
repairs.
Miles walking around with an ice pick.
I want to see the ice pick.
There's been a lot of Band-Aids, and the Band-Aids have not been good. And they've hidden some things, and we're not talking about like a nice epoxy job. We're talking someone just went over there and got some, what they call hard rock in a can, and like roll it up and just pushed it in there, and it's just, you know, that stuff swells, and that's why these windows, I mean, basically what I'm getting at is, and I will say, like, pulling storm windows off, I've done that a few times. Those things usually are locked in there. The house is kind of settled, and you don't just go in there and pop those out and they just come out. You're usually gonna break glass. You're gonna like,
You can't take them off and just put them back on.
But I will say, if we provide you guys photos, you're not gonna look at this, because this house has been maintained. It has been taken care of by Mr. Rubenstein, who's taken great care of it. He's, you know, things have been painted, paint's been scraped, things have been cleaned up. but it's not gonna be like a house that I come in here, that someone walks in here and goes, hey, I bought this house, it's had 30 years of deferred maintenance, and you can look right at the window and be like, oh man, that whole sill's blown out, that sash is blown out, multiple pieces of broken glass, all the glazings come out of it. That's not the case here, because these have been, like I said, somebody, and I think it was previous to Mr. Rubenstein's ownership, had kind of came in and done their share of Band-Aids to a lot of the rotted areas. And all that being said, I just don't know that if coming in here with a bunch of photos, unless they're ultra high resolution, we're going to be able to pick up on things you're going to be able to pick up when you field verify things by looking at them.
Sure.
Like, you know.
Well, that surely can't be the first time that's been the case. I mean,
There are paths for staff to like go out there and see without him having to take off every
Field
store
trip?
window.
I mean, we do have the ability to do a site visit. That's something, if the commission feels like that would be helpful, I think we could coordinate that. I do think it would be useful to take off at least some representative
Yeah.
storm windows so that we can see the condition of the window that's underneath. I mean, we have approved on numerous occasions replacement of windows based on photo documentation because it was evident in the images and in the written description that the windows were deteriorated beyond repair. So I think that that is possible, and I think that we're not there yet.
So touching on that point, Katie, this would be a question. This is kind of what I was thinking as I was sitting back there. Like I said, it's kind of a tall order to pull off. You might pull these windows off and you may not be getting them back on. I mean, I've done that already before, and you'll break glass, this and that. Is there a situation where we could, you know, go over there and do a survey of a window or of an elevation and take off one window, let's say like each side or something, and document that, then rather than pulling off all, you know, 20-something window?
Did the storm windows open?
No.
They're hung, they're double hung. Can you open the bottom sash?
You can't get the window on the interior. I mean, might be able to make that work. It's just,
I'm thinking that would be a way to get a better view of the historic window without fully removing the storm window.
yeah.
I understand that it's a big ask, but replacing every single window is also a big project and a big ask. And I think that the commission tries to hold a very high standard on when we approve even one window replacement, much less every single window in a house.
Katie,
So,
if the applicant's hesitant in taking all the storm windows off, which I understand why, I know you would rather not have a continuance, I understand that. But, I mean, we're kind of talking about the same thing here over and over again. So is one possibility that either we do a continuance with staff going out to do a site visit, or a continuance with allowing the commissioners to do a site visit? I mean, obviously, I can go, I mean, you can go do a site visit.
so I'm going to defer to Rita on commission site visits. So the way we've done those in the past, we schedule it with the applicant. We cannot have a quorum present, and they are not, the applicant is not supposed to talk to you.
Correct.
They can't walk around with you and say, look at this, touch that, go
But-
over here.
But with the permission of the
With the
homeowner,
permission of the
we can
homeowner,
go
you could do
individually and
that.
go look at it.
I can't not talk for that long.
You can sit in the car.
Yes. It's in the-
he'll be on his phone talking to somebody else.
Go to the mall.
You can go individually, but not discuss what you find until you're in this room talking with each other. So you see it and then you go. You can take notes. I'd prefer not that you take pictures because that wouldn't be available to the public, but you can go see and take the notes that you need for your own, the way you would write on your agenda notes about what's been presented.
I'm personally comfortable with the notion of taking off a storm window and evaluating. I had storm windows like that on my last house, so I completely understand the fear in, I couldn't get a window guy to take those off, like no matter how much money was involved. I just could not get anybody to attempt it. So I get that. Nobody wants to see you lose all of your windows that we take off. I would be comfortable looking at one of them in that manner.
And I guess if we're just talking about the formality of like this, obviously, you know, we're talking about really we're at this point, we're kind of discussing the storm windows. It seems like if there is, obviously, Sarah, I agree with you, like if we could take one window off, or even like I offered, like the one window in elevation, provide additional documentation, because it sounds like at this point, no one's walking out of here with approval on this that I, foresee today. So what I would really like is just, get some clarity on,
The documentation.
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly
Full
what
with an
we're
approval with
doing.
agreed upon conditions. Like, I'm totally comfortable with that.
Agreed upon condition that
Yeah, I mean,
you
I'm
take-
totally comfortable with approving it with the agreed upon condition that staff receives the documentation, provided by, like, more thorough documentation of the windows. I hear what you're saying, that they're not all gonna look the same way. I've seen that in person too, I get it. But, taking off one of those storm windows and just saying, like, kind of satisfying that box to check that, hey, we asked for pictures of the true exterior, so here we have it. We've not approved something without considering all of the angles and the elements, and we've not opened up the door for people to just come in and, not provide exactly what's needed and
Yeah.
move forward.
And then on the documentation, I'm kind of familiar with how you guys receive your staff reports and go through. Are you guys generally, when you're doing your research and looking, through case by case on this, do you have access, like, are you just looking at like a photo, or you like have the ability to be like, I can click on this photo and I can zoom in and be like, oh, I can see where
can
there's a
click and
major.
Yeah, we can zoom.
I was going to also ask the question about, video.
Bring nice pic.
Evidence, you can hyperlink it, put it online where the public has access to see the same video. Is that, is that an issue? If they take recordings of
Or present it
zoomed
here.
out,
I've
zoomed
asked
in,
before if we
come in.
could do video links, and I was told no.
Could we present it here?
Would that be necessary for approving with
Well, I think that would be if they came back.
Yeah.
If this is just to satisfy staff for having that, if we approve it with the condition that you take off one and take very
And fully
detailed,
document that
very
damage.
detailed documented photos of that one that shows this is a traditional representation of what these windows are, then is staff okay moving forward with
The
that?
whole house is at the same level.
But they definitely picked the worst window, of course,
They
to
will.
take the storm.
And staff can still come back and say no.
I mean,
but-
yeah, staff doesn't feel like, here's one, I will say as staff, I don't feel that one window with the storm off is evidence that all, however many dozen windows are damaged beyond repair. I'm
But-
not seeing 100% windows that are irreparable.
But what I'm trying to get around is
But I
that
would say
you're
if-
at an impasse where you want
Yeah.
all the storm windows off, the homeowner's at an impasse where they would prefer not to do that, so that's what I'm trying to get around.
I think it would be good to have one off, or to see if some could open on at least each elevation of the house, because what we often see is that the windows on one or two sides of the house have suffered a lot of weather damage, and the other two sides that have been more protected are in good shape. So seeing all four sides might be helpful. Again, if any of the storm windows are operable and can be opened, so that you can at least get a clearer shot of the window sash all the way around to where it meets the sill. What I will say is, if the commission is of a consensus that these windows are damaged beyond repair and we're comfortable approving it, we should just approve it now, because to put it on staff, we're going to be asking for a lot more documentation to get to the point where staff is convinced that these are damaged beyond repair.
There are 3 windows that are under the porch that don't have that same exposure. Those are also damaged beyond repair without having the same rain exposure.
In your survey. Yeah, those are the ones where we see a lot of, that's where we see a lot of splitting and cracking and yes.
Okay.
All of the windows have storm windows, by the way, on the exterior.
Commissioners, are there any questions that haven't been asked? In the interest of time, we are going to need to move towards a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 24-00068 with the specific findings that the documentation presented shows that Is it 50% of every window or 50% of the windows?
50%, more than 50% of every window
Of every window.
is beyond repair.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve with conditions. Do we have a
So
second?
one,
Sorry.
Condition about the
I think he was
transparency.
rethinking.
Oh, goodness.
What's that?
Just,
So I think the other condition is about the transparency. I think that's, well, it's not in there because we didn't recommend an approval. The other thing to make sure that everybody's comfortable with, they are proposing a simulated divided light window. The guidelines say you must have true divided light windows. Are we comfortable with that?
In order to
Yeah.
match the Muntins, though, a simulated divided
Well,
light
I'm better
is
with
the
that than I am, the 50% part is harder to get to.
I would agree.
So,
I'm going to pause you because we've got one more member of the public to speak. State your name and address for the record, please.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. I know you missed me last month, but I'm back now, so.
I thought you were bringing a stamp this time.
A what?
A stamp for your name and your address.
I did say that, didn't I? This is not my neighborhood and it's not my case, but it is a serious case. And wholesale window replacement to me is just a couple of steps under demolition. This is not something to be taken very lightly. We don't do fake muttons. We do real muttons on historic houses. If the windows are that severe, I think the burden is on the homeowner and the representatives to prove that. And we don't do clad. I mean, we've never done that. And I think if that motion moves forward with that, you're opening up a slippery slope of people who've always wanted to replace their windows with clad, fake muttons, and other things. And I would hope that you would reconsider some of the parts of your motion to keep a pure type of window there. There's windows that have to be rebuilt, windows that have to be replaced, but I think they need to go back with a wood window and not a clad window and real muntins. And we know there's people in town that make those. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Okay.
I thought we were past the point of chatting. Can I respond?
Well, let me ask, Patrick, do you want to proceed with your motion or do you want to?
I'll suspend for now. What?
Well, I mean, again, I think we've established through these two meetings that we're trying our best to be as close to the guidelines as we can with the guidelines acceptance of the need to move these buildings into the next century. And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to be as historically preserving of its historical past as possible with the superior building materials that we have today. That's all I was going to say.
I'll pull my motion, but I'll move for a continuance because I want to go see the windows myself. If we're not going to get all that documentation, then I want to go see them. So I'll move for a continuance based on that. And if there's a second, there's a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we've
I'll
got
go on a field trip.
we've got a motion to continue. What
Yeah, September
meeting are we
4th or
continuing it
October
to?
2nd.
That's up to the applicant.
Can you go before September 4th?
Yes.
Holly, there's motion to continue. We're just trying to decide what commission hearing to continue it to. The next would be September.
Can we do as soon as possible, guys? Can we get those storm windows off in the next week? Well, we'll go next month.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, remind me of the date. It's September
4th.
Okay, there's a motion to continue this item to September 4th commission hearing. We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I seconded.
Okay, we've got a second. Commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that item has been continued to the September commission hearing. Okay, we're on to item 7 now, HPCA-24-00075 at 907 Northwest 18th Street. Katie, tell us about this project.
This is Message Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by David Thatch, design directions for Dave Bliss for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct a vertical addition to the garage. This is kind of an unusual proposal. We have a garage that was approved to be constructed in, I believe, 2019, replacing a historic garage that the applicant did have documentation of, and they now would like to add a second story to their non-historic garage. We have guidelines about when a garage should be 2 stories that generally say that if we know what your historic garage was, then you need to match that height, although a 1-story can go up to 1.5. When we don't know what the garage was, then a 2-story may be appropriate if there are other 2-story garages on the block or at abutting properties. The other language that staff has referenced in the staff report is specifically in our section about additions, that says an addition may be horizontal or vertical, a second story added to an existing 1-story. However, vertical additions are not permitted at corner lots nor in the Mesta Park Historic District, and this is in Mesta Park. Now, in my interpretation of this section of the guidelines, that language, that whole section is really addressing additions to historic primary dwellings, primary structures, and we're talking about an accessory building and a non-historic accessory building at that. But we still have our guidelines for when and where a 2-story garage is appropriate that are not met by this application. Staff did recommend a continuance. The applicant may be able to identify unique circumstances and conditions that warrant the addition or to revise the design to be a 1.5-story that would meet that guideline.
Great. Thank you, Katie. I'm assuming you're the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, state your name and address. And
Dave Bliss, 907 Northwest 18th Street.
Okay, great. Tell us about the project.
Yeah, so essentially we're just looking for additional living space. My wife and I bought the home in 2021, so after the initial project referenced by Katie, HBCA 1900092, which again indicates that this is not a historical garage itself. This is a new building constructed in 2019. And essentially we're just looking for a home office space. We both have jobs that require a significant amount of time working from home, and we love the neighborhood. We prefer not to move, despite kind of outgrowing the house a little bit. So that is essentially the motivation for the project. You know, as a few things mentioned in the introduction there, one is that it's not a historical building as is. And then a few other things include limited visibility from the street. There's both a 2-story home directly to the east, which primarily shields the property, as well as an abutting structure to the northeast right on 19th Street, which is a similar type of property, a 2-story garage as well. So as you can see from the photo actually here, the white stucco building is the existing garage, and just on the right side of it here is a abutting property with a 2-story as well, and this is from the alley, obviously. And then the house here on Francis, additionally, is a 2-story home. Sorry, that's the corner building, which you can see there, the gray one to the left is the corner property. As Katie mentioned, this is not a corner property. So to say it's not entirely visible would not be correct. If you look directly down the driveway or from the alley, it will be slightly visible, but not very much. And, you know, with the plans we've drawn up, proposing, you know, a high quality structure to maintain the historical nature of it, the stucco, the craftsman style windows that are existing on the home as well. So we've made every effort to make this garage in line with the actual historic property, being the house itself. And I think that the project in 2019 actually did a good job as well of doing that. As you can see, the garage to the right there, which abuts us, and there's additionally a 2-story garage just 2 houses down as well to the west. You can kind of see it peeking up there, not the immediate neighbor there, but the second one, you can see the peak there sticking up over. Yeah, exactly, thank you. So that's kind of my introductions, and I'd love to, you know, hear any considerations you guys have.
Well, my first question is easiest path forward. Are you opposed to a 1.5-story, which would be what, Katie, an additional 3 feet from the top of the current joist and then beginning of the roof line?
Not necessarily. I think, preferably the two-story. You can sort of see how low that garage is, and I don't think that it would be higher than either the home on the corner lot or the abutting property behind it. So that was kind of our reasoning for why the two-story seemed appropriate, and that it wouldn't be any higher than the existing comparables. But obviously, if that's not something that we can come to terms with, but that was the reasoning for the true two-story, was that it would fit with the already existing neighborhood conditions.
Would you have to have an interior staircase with a 1.5 story?
I don't think it addresses that one way or the other.
No, I just meant spatially. Like, does he have room to do? And how big is your garage? I'm sorry, that's what I'm trying to get at. I was trying to find the square footage of the existing garage. 20 by 20? So it's still just outside.
And to be clear, we don't have any photographic evidence that it was one story or what the garage was there
We
before?
have photographic evidence that it was
Oh,
one
that it was.
story.
Okay,
I think
sorry.
the existing garage mimics the original garage, but the existing garage is new.
Okay. Sorry, that line item in the staff report confused me.
The existing garage has been moved, I think, as well. It was initially in the corner of the lot extending from the driveway up, and it's now kind of centered. So I would say it's already quite a bit different than what was initially there.
So, sorry, what I was trying to ask a second ago, and I apologize because I confused myself by trying to calculate this, but would you have enough height for a door and an exterior staircase on a 1.5 story structure? If we were to approve one right now, because there's not enough room for an interior staircase because you've got a 20 by 20 garage.
David, would you be able to answer that?
I'm David Thatch, and the designer of the proposed garage. We would have to do a gable end on the west end of the garage to get a stairway up the side, on the outside, into the second story.
Okay. So that would change the form away from what was originally there. So that would require a unique circumstance anyway. So.
Or we could possibly do a large dormer on the west side to let the stairway in.
Katie, how would that work if, they did have to alter the form significantly from its original form to do that 1.5 story? But we would administratively approve in a normal world a 1.5 story
Well,
garage.
we wouldn't administratively approve. I mean,
It is
that would come
approvable.
to you all.
Okay.
The guidelines support a 1.5 story. I think that's always kind of the commission's discretion. People make a variety of modifications to their historic garage form every time they come in and build a new one, whether it gets a little bigger, a little deeper, wider, taller. They move a pedestrian door around. I think it would just be up to you all to look at a new design and consider the visibility of the changes and the balance of any changes in comparison to what elements of the historic design are being retained.
Is the additional height for a 1.5, is that from the top plate or the roof peak?
It is the height from the floor to where the wall meets the ceiling.
Okay.
And again, on that point, I would just ask for consideration about the lack of visibility that this has without, specifically walking up partway up the driveway or being in the alley, almost not visible at all, from the other angles and from the main thoroughfares. So I would just ask for that to be considered as well.
It is truly one of the least visible stretches with regard to what you can see in terms of the accessory dwellings on that block. It's tricky because I don't think the guidelines really support it, but at the same time, it's a brand new garage that nobody can, see and therefore can't really detract from anything. To me, that's enough of a unique circumstance that it is a new structure that is more than minimally visible. It is extremely, extremely hard to see back there unless you're standing in the alley. So to me, that's enough. I know it's a stretch on the guidelines.
I mean, this is Google Street View from Francis looking down the alley, and that's the garage. So, you know, I feel like that's, I mean, I know it's kind of a secondary, it's not right in my face, but that's the garage we're talking about that we're proposing to go up a floor. So just to give, you know.
But I think, I mean, the house right there on the corner is 2-story. The garage right there is 2-story.
Yeah.
So it's not out of place. It's not going to stick out. And I think in the future, somebody's not going to notice and realize that.
I would have a lot more trouble approving this if that was the original garage. But it's not, and contextually, there's precedent for it around to be a 2-story garage. So I could probably get on board with it.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this item? I think there were comments from Mr. Park, weren't there?
There was a comment indicating they agreed with the staff findings, but nothing specific.
I think it just noted that they agree with staff recommendations as the application would not support approval of a 2-story garage at this time. That's from Mr. Park. Okay, Commissioners, any
Yeah.
other questions for the applicant?
I do think we're missing some information on materials. Katie, can you specify exactly what that is that's lacking?
I'm going to look to Angela and see if she knows off the top of her head, because I don't recall at this moment what else we were missing.
Are you asking about the materials for the facade?
Yeah, so in the staff report, it notes that the materials and design components of the proposed second-story addition, blah, 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 they need an understanding of exactly what materials, lighting, et cetera, is going to be used.
The existing siding on that 2019 garage is stucco, and the proposed second-story addition is going to be stucco. And then there'll be cast concrete window sills underneath the new windows, and then the stair railing is going to be wood painted.
I mean, the elevations are noted up pretty well with what's what, but I think you could just make the condition anyway, just if there is anything missing. Or Angela, did you have something?
I honestly do not recall that there is anything missing from this, guys. I really don't.
For me, it's enough of a unique circumstance that it's minimally visible, won't detract from the historic character of the surroundings or the neighborhood on the whole, and that this is a recently constructed garage. Okay. If nobody feels differently or has further questions.
Commissioners, any other comments on this item or questions for the applicant?
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
I will motion to approve HPCA 2400075 with the unique circumstance that given its minimum visibility and the new construction nature of this garage, we feel it's an appropriate addition to the property.
Second that.
We've got a motion, and we also have a second. I'm sorry, Keith.
So we may have to do a voice vote.
Okay. You just let me know. Or you roll call it?
Milner,
Okay. I say yes. Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Gaines, McBride,
Yes.
Hoare,
Yes.
Whitley.
Yes.
Okay, that item has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, number 8, HPCA-24-00076 at 2215 Northwest 25th Street.
This is in Shepherd, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by John Reinke, Living Spaces for Myers Stewart Trust for certificate of appropriateness to 1, enclose a balcony by adding roof, screen, and posts elective, and 2, repair enclosed porch required. This is an application They are proposing repairs to the existing side porch that was previously enclosed. The enclosure's been there for quite some time. That's not up for debate. They're just making repairs to the cladding material on that, and that's part of this application. The other request, you can see that there is a railing at the top of that enclosed side porch. They would like to put a roof supported by posts and screens on that to enclose and screen in that roof above the enclosed side porch. The guidelines do make allowances for enclosing porches, but this is not really what we would consider a porch. This is more of a balcony. It is currently not covered. It currently does not have posts supporting a roof that would be filled in by screens. So staff did not recommend approval of that. There are some provisions in the guidelines for things like awnings and canopies that are fabric, that are more temporary in nature, that could be used to provide some shade on that balcony. And there is evidence that they had an awning in this location at one time.
Okay,
So
thank you.
they're not asking for that, but we've just offered that up as an alternative to what has been requested.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record, and then tell us about the project.
My name is John Reinke, and here on behalf of the address 2215 Northwest 25th Street. I reside at 2304 Northwest 26th Street, and my relationship to this is I'm the contractor of the would-be addition that we're talking about.
Okay.
I feel like you're the official contractor of All Shepherd.
I know.
Some days it feels
Work.
like that, and that's okay. I mean, I live there, so, you know, the commute is easy.
Sure.
So,
Comes for Crown Heights, you come for Shepherd. Every
Yeah.
month.
Do you have any
So-
comments on the?
Well,
looks like
so I think the proposal more or less stands on its own to a great degree. You know, the purpose of, you know, looking at this is actually to increase the functional usability of the porch in a way that makes it easier to maintain, as well as, you know, just increases the overall seasonable parts of it. You know, the mosquitoes are obviously everybody's favorite part of outdoor living in the spring and fall and summer. And we approach this with a number of reasons that are worth mentioning. You know, by putting a permanent roof on it instead of a canvas awning, we will in effect get a better overall life for the enclosed porch below it, as well as have less maintenance to do, because the owner's experience with the canvas awning that did pre-exist that Katie mentioned was that he didn't get anywhere near 5 to 10 years that were noted in the documents. And also, you know, being at that elevation, maintaining it, especially if it's big enough to cover the whole thing, was a practical struggle. So some of the other things that actually make it a really good thing to use a more permanent structure like we've proposed is not only the maintenance aspect and the long life of it, but we'll actually have a structure to hang a gutter on, which will let us control water that would just jet right off of a canopy and potentially damage the house to the east there. We're proposing to put gutters on this to do a better job of controlling that output. So so that's some of the aspects that we really wanted to do. And also, you know, the owner reminded me that his homeowner's policy doesn't actually cover his canopy if it's canvas. And so if it was a shingle roof, it would actually fall under the actual roofing of the original home. So things like our Oklahoma hailstorms and things of that nature would be better able to be covered in the structure as we proposed it. So for my own use, in terms of, you know, standing before you guys and where we're going to be, you know, looking through the staff findings, the staff finding says that they're suggesting to continue this based on needing more information. So before we kind of get into that, are there any questions that the board has that we can address here today that haven't been addressed so far.
I have a question for staff. Is it still technically considered enclosing if it's open air?
So the way the guidelines talk about enclosing porches is they refer to both screens and glass. Section 3.3 has a number of guidelines about enclosing a historic front or side porch with screen panels as well as with glazing. It's more supportive of enclosing with screen, less supportive of enclosing with glazing. But I think the thing here is we're not just enclosing, we're also creating a structure that doesn't currently exist on a visible side elevation of the house. I think if there was already a roof there and we were just putting in screens,
Gotcha.
that would be different, but it's a more extensive change than that.
I mean, would it be more acceptable if there weren't screens on it and it was just fully open? Or is that's still just considered?
To me, taking a one-story, like these one-story side porches are a very common feature. Them having been enclosed over time is a very common condition. Adding a floor to that, to me, is not an appropriate change. It's an addition, and we would say additions need to go on the back. So I understand the desire to make it a usable space, but that's what we have to balance with the guidelines.
Yeah, I hear you. And this is a very common condition in Shepherd. I walk it every day. There are a lot of these type of houses that stayed open on the second floor, so I understand.
Katie, my question is, why was it recommended that it was continued instead of just denied? Is there additional information that could make this more palatable to staff?
Really not additional information. It would be if they wanted to make a revision to it, if they wanted to come back with something more like a canopy and awning, that continuing it would hold this application open for them. They could make that change, not have to reapply, pay another fee.
Yeah, I think the visibility for me is, if it's a departure from the guidelines and it's street, like front street facing front of the house, is probably too much of a departure.
Well, yeah, we actually did make note of that, going through the neighborhood and just kind of doing an informal survey. There are, as noted, plenty of side porches that are screened in. And, at one point in the past, this probably could have been that way. So, but in its existing condition, that top side is functionally unusable for 90% of the day, so it definitely needs to have some sort of covering there. And what we've proposed definitely is fairly modest, at least in my opinion. I've kind of learned a few lessons over the years of coming before you guys in terms of, oh, nope, that's too dramatic, so scale it back a bit. But anyway, so we definitely don't think that it's out of line with respect to the neighborhood. And all these are built pretty close together, and some of the 2 stories are frighteningly close. So anyway, but it feels like it fits to us. So and there isn't really an addition available with the floor plan of the house towards the backyard, to Katie's point. And that standard kind of 4-square architecture. There is a door that leads to the backyard on the northeast or northwest corner in the backyard, but that lets directly out into the driveway. So it doesn't, we can't really go that way without occluding access to the garage. So, yeah, this really is kind of the best fit for doing something like this for an outdoor, 3-season sort of room. So.
Commissioners, do we have any other questions for the applicant on this project?
I don't. I mean, it's really nice. I know it would be really nice, but just being on the front of the house, I can't come up with a single reason to say, yes, that'd be totally fine.
Yeah, well, and I definitely understand where you're coming from on that.
I mean, I'd love to sit up there and hang out. It'd be great, but
well, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't like that, right? And there's a door there already, so So it's definitely going to be used, and actually putting that living space behind a screen wall with the balcony actually makes it a little bit less, in a practical sort of way, it makes it a little bit less cumbersome to the neighbors, because you're actually putting that metaphorical that little bit of tactile difference between someone just staring out over a railing at your window for anybody who's on that east side. So
You may have to try some organic screening.
some what?
Organic screening.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard a lot of that too. Or we've talked about screens and stuff. That's a whole lot of tall, what you call them, tall evergreen trees, and not a lot of space to put them in. Because that porch basically extends right out to the property line. So, and to do any sort of screening, we would definitely have to actually get the neighbors' participation on that. So, and it would be difficult to do any sort of screening in any sort of way that would be functionally usable, that wouldn't look even weirder than what we're proposing. So,
I just meant tall plants and planters on the
the
second story porch.
Yeah, like freestanding planters on the porch itself.
Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
Well, the homeowner is here with me.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, you can come. You're welcome to. And please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Stuart Mayer. I'm the trustee of the Stuart Mayer Trust. I live at 12932 Green Valley Drive. I'd like to say that I bought this house in 1980. In 1984, I enclosed the side porch to have more usable space. Also, it was a security risk. There was an attempted break-in through the side door. You can't really tell, but it's really kind of out of sight right there. And so I just had a daughter, and decided for safety's sake we'd enclose it. It was a win-win-win deal. More space, security, a quiet working space. The original roof for that balcony was a tin sheet. Well, I don't know if you guys have ever gone out on a tin sheet roof, but it was pretty hard to really go out there. So what you see now is the fourth iteration of trying to put a roof over there that would not leak and was still usable, where you could still sit outside. In 1990, I put a canvas canopy over it, which you don't see now because it had deteriorated beyond repair, really. It was an aluminum frame. That porch is 8 feet by 16 feet. So every time you changed out the canopy, you'd have to pull the frame off, send it off. They'd have to put the new canvas on there and then bring it back off and remount it. After 4 of those tries, I decided it might be time to try to do something else. So the prevailing wind direction through here is north-south, which would go right through the porch that you're looking at there. And as you're probably aware, that's why all these old houses have all these windows and porches, is because people opened the windows up as soon as the sun went down and stand on the porch until the house cooled down, then they could go get some sleep. And I suspect probably people slept on this little balcony back then, but I don't envy you guys having to tread the line between maintaining historical integrity, but also honoring people's wishes, and also really trying to keep up with the changing world that we all live in. I can tell you that this neighborhood has changed an awful lot since I bought it in 1980. So I think when I enclosed that porch, I think I did a pretty good job. I think it's consistent with the architecture that was in existence around the neighborhood and in the house itself. And the proposal that we've made to put a roof and enclosure is, I think, also consistent with maintaining the feel and maintaining the integrity of an old historic district like this. I think John talked about the mosquitoes. Well, as you probably aware that Shepherd was built on an old lake bed, and the mosquitoes haven't ever left. There are clouds of them in the summertime. So I don't live in this house anymore. My daughter, who was born here, lives in there now. Enclosing that porch here again I would feel better security-wise if that was enclosed, because there is a door leading right into the master bedroom there. I think I think both of us would sleep better at night knowing that was taken care of. So, just to put it in context with the history that I've had, a permanent roof is really the only solution for the current homeowners, current residents, and future homeowners, because economically it's just not feasible to maintain a canvas roof on a second-story balcony this large. It just isn't. And a single shingled roof with guttering on it, I think, is extremely important, and I think addresses all the concerns that people might have. So I just, in summary, I think, the roof is needed. It needs to be permanent to be able to use that balcony whatsoever. Also, to keep the water from leaking into the room below, which has happened. This is the multiple iterations of the roof itself as well. The guttering would keep the water from running off any kind of covering onto the house next door, which is what we took into consideration in this design. And the enclosure, I think, is for comfort and security. I think the design is totally respectful of the neighborhood and its historic nature. So,
thank you for your comments.
Was the second level door there originally, or was that a part of the modification?
Oh, that was original.
That's
Yeah,
original.
Yeah. And then just as a side note, there's a window unit in that window. Once this gets finished, my hope is to go ahead and put the HVAC system for the upstairs, which currently is just the downstairs that has heating and air. So right now, the upstairs is just window units. So.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or thoughts on this item? We actually have 2 items on this one.
The only thing that started to just kind of bother me at the end was if that door is original out to that space. I mean, it's a little bit more of a justification to make it a more permanently usable area, but that's unusual in and of its, I mean.
It does seem like a lot of flat kind of roof areas that have railing, they have windows that people crawl in and out of, but not a door specifically usually.
That's one of the things I actually iterated in the report, or in my submission, was that by all characteristics, that door seemed to be there. The brickwork seemed to be original. So, and with Stuart just mentioning that happened to be part of the original structure of the house, it's almost like they intended this to be a walkout porch from the very beginning, So, which is kind of cool, and I'm glad to be here and be part of it. But as it was originally conceived, if it was that, you have to wonder if they thought maybe a roof would be there, or if it was always just going to be a second-story balcony.
So I know I said earlier that there wasn't really any additional information. I think one thing that might be informative if the applicant wanted to continue to pursue a permanent roof here would be to do kind of a photo survey of other houses that are of this, because I know we have a lot of these in Shepherd. And honestly, I think Crown Heights has a fair number of this style of kind of a colonial with a side porch.
Shepherd has a lot specifically on 28th and 29th.
To see, how common is this condition where it's an uncovered balcony with a door or with windows? I mean, I would say the default is, yes, there's evidence the door is original, but there's also evidence that there was never a roof. So that's presumably the historic condition. But if, that would be one thing that maybe would be helpful for the commission to consider, is knowing a little bit more about the
I think that's
patterns of this property type.
worth doing if y'all are interested in doing that.
Well, we definitely are interested in this being the solution. So whatever we can do that will help us forward that, and, obviously you guys get a lot of people who are frustrated with, what can I do? And, you're kind of bound by, you can't give guidance because then there's preference. Well, I don't need to tell you about all that. You live it every day. So, but having an active, having something that we could do, and a photo survey is certainly doable, so.
Maybe also some additional photos of that door that, that is original.
Right.
That would be of interest to me.
Okay.
Commissioners, I think we've got 2 items on here that need to be, voted on, and I do believe one item, staff recommendation was approval on, and that was repairs on the enclosed porch. So I think we're going to have 2 motions on this one. And do we have
I'm
any other
happy to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Sorry. I make a motion to approve HBCA-24-00076, item 2 with the specific findings noted in the staff report.
Or you mean item 1, the approve?
2 is item 1.
Sorry, yes, I read
Yeah.
item 2.
Yeah.
Yes, number 1, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So number 1, item 2.
Number 1 is enclosing the balcony by adding a roof screen and post. Number
Well,
2 is repairing the porch.
Number 1 is item 2.
Yes, that's so confusing. Sorry.
Yes, sorry. The first recommendation is to approve item 2, which
Yes.
is, I think, what you were
Yeah, that's what I
doing
said.
now. Yes, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah, I confused that.
Yeah, that's not my fault.
Sorry.
Correct.
John and his numbers.
I don't need to drive anymore. Okay. We've got a motion to approve item 2, this item. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a second. Commission members, please vote in PrimeGov.
I will say, made that a little confusing that number 1 is item 2 and number 2 is item 1.
They're keeping us on our toes.
But continue, yeah.
Okay, that, item 2 was approved.
Uh,
Now we'll go back to the item 1, which I think we're looking at a continuance. What
Would you like next month or October's? September 4th or October 2nd?
When would documentation need to be to you, Katie, for the September 4th? It's next week, isn't it?
Yeah, we need it next week.
Yeah, functionally probably going to need October. My wife is down with COVID, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get it because I live with her. So hence this. So I don't know that I'll practically be able to complete this photo survey in time. So I also want to say no backsies. We almost had you.
Fair enough.
But no, I think unfortunately I believe practically October is going to be the right call.
Okay, and I'm sorry, what's the date of the October?
The 2nd.
Okay, so
So I will make a motion to continue, or make a motion for HBCA 24-00076 to continue item 1 to the October 2nd meeting.
okay, we've got a motion to continue. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that item has been continued to the October commission hearing. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. We're on number 9 now. That's HPCA-24-00078 at 904 Northwest 14th Street. Katie, tell us about this project.
This is Heritage Hills, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Justin Vank and Amanda Vank for certificate of appropriateness to 1 construct pool. The reason that this is before you all is simply because the installation of the pool will put them over that 50% threshold that we try to stay under on lot coverage. It puts them at about 56%, which is not dramatically over, but when they're in that state, we bring those forward to the commission so that you all can review it and address the project. I will note that this property previously had most of the backyard paved, so this may or may not be kind of a win in the sense of taking that paving out and going back with the pool and with more landscaping, but that is what is before you.
Okay. I'm assuming you're the applicant?
Yes,
Okay,
Justin
please.
Vink.
Yep, and your address?
904 Northwest 14th Street.
Okay, tell us about the project.
We're in the middle of doing a remodel, and then with all this heat and with our kids, we thought it was time to potentially do a pool. When we did buy the house, like she said, in 2014, the lot coverage was 77%. The entire backyard was paved. And with approval in 2017, we removed all that concrete, including with our driveway. We intentionally did a ribbon driveway to have as much grass as possible. And with the pool design, we are doing a very minimal border. We want as much grass in there in the back as possible for our kids. So it's, with that in mind, we also, I mean, a pool, while it's technically considered a structure, it would act as a detention pond for quite a while with that water. So it's not typically just a, an additional structure in the backyard. And I think the other concerns was potentially drainage. Our neighbor to the west does not have a basement, and we are clear past the neighbor to the east. And we are the most southern street in Heritage Hills, and so there is a easement behind our house that drops down. So there is no houses in our neighborhood that would be affected by any additional drainage.
Okay, commissioners, what questions do you have for the applicant?
My only question is, I assume the lot coverage was calculated off of the provided site plan, but the site plan doesn't show any kind of sidewalk or border around the pool. So I was just wondering what that material is going to be, because if that's going to be hard paving, then, like, that's poured concrete, then that changes.
Oh, that includes that 16 inches of just coping material.
Okay,
Yeah. Everything around that would be grass.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as everything around this is, I know we are like pushing boundaries a little bit. I mean, if there's any reasonable way to shrink the pool and get closer to 50%, obviously that's ideal, but I do think you've done a really good job. Like, everything is very modest. I mean, there's nothing that's oversized or really pushing me personally past my comfort zone. I really appreciate the effort at the driveway and creating a little more green space and leaving as much grass as possible. For me, this is a big win. This is what I would love everybody to submit as a pool, is like leaving all of the grass and keeping everything as green as possible.
Yeah, going down our neighborhood, we go into backyards and like the whole backyard is concrete, and it's like, why did you do that?
No, I think this is really nice. Do you have a justification for, I mean, just because you are so close to that 50% lot coverage, I mean, is there a justification for the size of the pool if it could be more satisfactory to that?
I mean, technically, we're at 51 when we start, so there's no, like, shrinking it incrementally, it was going down 0.5%, or like,
yeah,
we did bring it down.
Yeah, they brought it down 26%
Yeah.
before this, so I think there's maybe a little bit of leniency there.
I like it. I appreciate the effort, and I think you've done a really great job of keeping everything extremely minimal and not trying to push boundaries anywhere. So for me, I'm a yes.
Okay, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
I'll just add that, we talk about that 50% mark. What the HP guidelines actually say is that we should not substantially alter the built to open space ratio, and I think it's pretty easy to make the case that this is not substantially altering that ratio for this property, with the way that they've been able to eliminate a lot of paving and keep a lot of the grass.
Yeah, they did substantially alter it for the better. Yeah. So, well, I will happily make a motion to approve HPCA 24-00078. I just want to scroll here, make sure. Yep, with the specific findings noted in the staff report.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a second. Commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, Okay,
Very
that
well
item
done.
has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I think we're all back and ready to get started. I think we need to do a roll call, though.
Yes. Yes.
Milner,
Present.
Jordan,
Present.
Gaines, McBride,
Present.
Hoare,
Present.
Whitley.
Present.
Okay, we have quorum? We're good? Okay. Okay, we are now in other business. We'll start with item A, SPUD 01633 at 100 Northwest 22nd Street. Katie, talk to us about this project.
This is located in Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. The application is by David Box, WBFB Law, for Rhea Wolbrink to request a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission to the Planning Commission regarding a request to rezone the property to a simplified planned unit development, SPUD, in accordance with the regulations of the R4 Residential District, Historic Landmark, HL District, and Heritage Hills East Urban Conservation Zoning District, the UCD. Except with the restrictions and uses as called out within the proposed SPUD. This was on the Commission's agenda last month, but was not discussed. It was deferred to allow for further discussion with staff and with neighborhood representatives. It's back before you today with a few changes. I'm going to just kind of talk a little bit about why we review SPUDs to start, and then briefly go through what they're asking for that's different than what would be allowed right now, but the applicant will otherwise present the project to you all. So the municipal code requires the Historic Preservation Commission to review and provide comments upon actions by other city bodies, including Planning Commission and City Council, that affect the historic districts. So things like SPUDs, other zoning changes, special exceptions, those types of things, before they can go before another entity at the city, have to go to the Historic Preservation Commission for comment. We are asked to comment upon the impact that the proposed zoning change would have upon the historic character, integrity, et cetera, of the historic property and district. The way that staff looks at that when we prepare a staff report is to assess what the proposed changes are from what is allowed now to what would be allowed under the SPUD, and evaluate whether or not those changes would still result in a project that would feasibly meet applicable guidelines and be appropriate. What the SPUD does is lay out the parameters within which a project can be developed. The setbacks, the lot coverage, the height requirements, parking requirements, perhaps landscaping requirements, screening requirements, the uses that would be allowed. It does not, they often include renderings and very detailed site plans to give the public and the commissions and the various bodies that are reviewing an idea of what the concept is for the project, but all of those documents are not binding. What is binding is the language that is in the master design statement that establishes those bulk regulations for the zoning of the property. So in this instance, they are currently zoned HP. That's our base zone that primarily allows single-family residential, other neighborhood scale institutional things like schools and churches, and then also allows several different things through processes like special exceptions and variances and that sort of thing. They are asking to zone it to be an R4 base zone that allows, that's four-family residential with the HL overlay. So the Historic Preservation Commission review of any alterations to the site, new construction, et cetera, would be retained. The guidelines would be retained. It would just change the uses that are allowed and then the applicable regulations associated with those uses. HP as a base zone does not have many of the metrics and regulations that most of our typical base zones have. We don't have a numerical setback. We have guidelines for setbacks. We don't have a numerical lot coverage calculation. We have guidelines that address lot coverage, et cetera. So they're kind of putting in some specific numbers that otherwise would be just based on the guidelines and the commission review as a project came forward. They've proposed a maximum building height of 35 feet and two stories, 35 feet, which There are two-story structures along that block, which the guidelines would allow a two-story structure on a block where there are other two-story structures. They have proposed to limit the number of buildings to no more than 4. That's not something the HP guidelines specifically address, but would just be based on the spacing and proportion of structures on the site. They have proposed building setback that for the western half of the property, so the property closer in toward the neighborhood, would be 20 feet. That is about 5 feet less than the setback down the rest of the block, and a setback of 10 feet for the eastern half, closer to Broadway of the lot. That's along 22nd Street, and then setbacks on of 10 feet along Broadway, 5 feet at the rear. I might be getting these numbers, and then 3 feet in between each of the buildings as a minimum. They've proposed lot sizes and lot widths that are consistent with what this would be if you split it back into 2 lots. Historically, there were 2 dwellings on this property with various accessory structures and dwellings over the course of time. They've addressed access from both 22nd Street or from Broadway. They've asked for a minimum requirement of open space of 25%, further defining that as space with no structures or impermeable paving. Again, HP doesn't have a requirement specific to this, but we typically look to 50% for lot coverage. They are proposing to meet code for parking requirements, with some exceptions to allow for compact spaces and to allow spaces within a garage to count toward their parking. Again, retaining the design review, kind of modifying the setback is the most notable thing from what our guidelines would typically support. And so staff, in working on this with the applicant and with residents, we did feel like this corner is an unusual corner within the neighborhood. It is at the edge of the designated district, and it is adjacent to a street with very heavy traffic. It is adjacent to a fire station, commercial, just down the block from Northwest 23rd Street, and staff felt that this would be an appropriate location to accommodate more than just single-family residences on this site. Staff also felt that the nature of the corner, the intersection with Broadway, was perhaps a unique circumstance to justify the setbacks stepping out gradually to be closer to the street at the corner at the intersection. So we have provided an analysis of that in the staff report, recommended a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission with some conditions noted. One would be to the extent that it's possible, to revise an increase in the open space requirement to be more consistent with the surrounding development pattern. The applicant has indicated that the way they have it designed right now, it's actually higher than what they've requested. And then we also included some language about clarifying requirements for the screening of parking. I wanted to note this for the commission. We have several different guidelines about screening parking at multifamily structures and at commercial properties. I think the language that's actually the most appropriate for this site is that language for multifamily. So I would perhaps recommend switching that from commercial to multifamily. Commercial is a little bit more of a true cutoff and a buffer, but I think in a case like this, we do want, this is a residential development that's proposed. We want it to feel like it's part of the neighborhood, not like it's walled off from the neighborhood the way you might want it if it was some sort of a commercial business with traffic coming and going at all hours. So the other thing that I'll note, and this is in the comments, is that our purview and our expertise as a body is on the design and the form and the physical characteristics of the site. This body's not really tasked with how many studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units end up within a particular building, or whether or not they have 1 parking space or 2 parking spaces, all these kind of metrics that are really the purview of the comprehensive plan and the Planning Commission. So I have just crafted a recommendation that kind of directs the commission toward those areas and those considerations that are more in keeping with what the commission's guidelines and regulations address. So happy to answer any questions, but the applicant is here and they're ready to speak on the project as well.
Okay. The applicant is present?
Yes, James Boggs, 522 Colford Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Here on behalf of the applicant, Klaus, also with me is the architect for the project. This is one that we spent quite a bit of time meeting with the neighbors, meeting with staff. We hope that we've arrived at a position that we have a project that is acceptable to all parties. What we have on this site is a difficult site to develop. One, because you're along Broadway. Two, because what's across the street. Here you're looking obviously south and you see residential structures. If you were looking north, what you would see is a credit jewelry shop as well as 2 loan offices. Why that's significant is right across the street from us is zone C4. C4 has been deemed by this city as too intense to allow anymore. So if I tried to apply for C4 anywhere in the city, I would be rejected. It still exists in the code as a relic for properties that are still zone C4 because they're deemed incompatible with residential use. So what that means is you're just not likely to have a traditional single-family home built here. The other unique situation that we have here is this is actually 2 lots, and the lots are actually oriented east-west. So what we have done with our site plan, if staff could display this, it would be helpful. Maybe.
I'm working on it.
No, you're fine. While she's looking, I assume you have in your packet because it's a part of the SPD. So much of the discussion with the neighbors originally dealt with setback, and the western half of the site at original inception was closer to 22nd Street. So to the west, that house is set back approximately 25 feet. And so what we've done is we tried to flip this so that we pushed back these units closer to the 25-foot setback as close as we could. 20 feet is what we achieved. Now, on the eastern half of the site, these are actually oriented to Broadway, and we've pushed those up. Our thought, there we go. Our thought, close enough. Our thought was what it really provides is kind of a nice end cap to that street. If you live to the west of this site, your visual of Broadway is now partially blocked with what will be a residential structure. So we think it provided a nice end cap and kind of closing in, for lack of a better term, the residential piece of this, blocking that heavier, faster traffic along Broadway. And then we have that unit in the back as well. Additionally, because of traffic concerns, we do have access points off not only Broadway but 22nd Street, and we think that providing that access off Broadway will be a good thing to relieve some of the traffic that may otherwise come down 22nd Street. We do meet code as it relates to parking. I know we don't want to get into a protracted discussion about parking, but we do meet code. And our hope is that the neighbors, the commission sees what progress has been made through meetings and realizes that it's a unique site, it's a difficult site because of the factors I described. And what we have here, I think, represents a nice compromise. So we are asking you for a recommendation to then go to Planning Commission tomorrow, asking for a recommendation. Ultimately, 6 weeks later, we'll be at City Council. Happy to answer any questions as it relates to density. You know, this is the kind of the core, and so in terms of increased density on infill lots, the comprehensive plan really strives to increase density on infill lots, and so what we have here is hopefully viewed as a nice balance. Happy to answer any questions. Ask for your approval.
Okay, commissioners, what questions do you have for the applicant?
I like it. I don't have any.
Just speak loud. So if you look at the county site, there's actually 3 lots platted. You're just doing the top 2 that are closest to 22nd, right? And that third lot that also faces to the east has an existing home on it that is not being contemplated.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's not a part of the application.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood.
Do you feel like you'd be willing to work with the conditions that staff recommended, that you revise the open space requirement to be more consistent with the surrounding historic development and include language clarifying screening of parking?
So so condition 2, as Katie mentioned, we're agreeable to that, replacing the word commercial with multifamily. As it relates to open space, I think we actually exceed open space under R4 because under the code, parking is actually deemed open space. And so there's these weird functions. What we tried to do is count open space as what is not, paved. And so we're at 25%, but we actually think we exceed what the code would require under R4. We have done our best to really maximize what we can do from satisfying concerns with parking, but also satisfy concerns with having the ability to have some yard space for the people that will live here. So where we're at the 25% as defined by the way we're doing it is kind of the upper end of, I think, what we can do.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. Normally, I push more for on-street parking, but this is kind of a unique condition here. And we don't obviously want to block the one way out. So if you're providing everything required on site, I think there is a little bit of leniency there.
Yes.
But if you're saying that you've already met more than code is required,
It's a very strange traffic pattern right there.
Yeah.
And, there's a huge park median right across from this, which I love kind of conceptually having that near a multifamily where there's not a lot of green space. I think that that's a happy little accident right there. So I think it's really well done. I think they've met a lot of the requirements we usually ask about, so I'm in favor of an approval, or a recommendation for an approval, rather.
does anyone wish to speak on it?
Okay, any members of the public?
She's back. She's back. Oh, but you'll be interested this time. You've never heard me say this in public. I want to thank David Box.
State your name and address again, though.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. I'd like
Thank
to
you.
thank David Box, Caitlin Turner, and Kloss for all the work that they put in and the time they've spent with the neighborhood to try to come up with a good solution for this unusual location in the neighborhood. We're very excited to possibly have a contributing property on that street and kind of help close off our kind of a weakness to Broadway and Byron's Liquor Store, which we didn't say out loud, but we will say out loud. So just to make it much more residential in feel. And so I hope all SPUD applications could have this much interaction with the neighborhoods as this one has. And Kloss's work with my friend Monty Jacobs on the next one that you'll hear, and the time they've taken to talk to the neighbors about that one is admirable. I would like to say that we'd like to explore changing the SPUD procedure some to the point where the neighborhood, where maybe it's introduced 1 month and then it's heard the next month, because not in this case, we've known about this for a while, but sometimes we don't know about them till 3 days before you all hear them. And so that's a detriment to the neighborhoods and creates a lot of knee-jerk reactions and hopefully unneeded apprehension about them, but I'll talk to Katie more about that. But other than some little tweaks and some things like that I'm sure we can deal with, we're supportive of this.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have this on loop in my office.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Okay, any other questions, commissioners, or do we have a recommendation?
I will make a recommendation for SPUD 01633 for recommend approval with conditions to the Planning Commission with the specific findings noted in the staff report as well as the conditions noted.
So we talked about changing the condition to say multifamily instead of
yes.
commercial, and then whether or not you want to include, I think they've indicated they prefer not to change the open space. Now, it's a condition, they don't have to agree to the condition, but
Right.
whether you want to keep that in there or not.
Yeah, we don't need condition 2, or condition 1. So I guess, do I just rephrase the condition then?
Yeah.
With the condition that they revise the language, clarifying requirements for screening from commercial to multifamily.
Okay, we've got a motion to recommend approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oh. We do have a second, but who, wait, is it, okay. Okay, all other commissioners, please cast your votes in PrimeGov.
Yes.
Okay, that item has been recommended approval, and that will go on to planning. Okay, we've got another item under other business, item B, and it is another SPUD, SPUD-01655 at 2820 North Robinson Avenue. Katie, talk to us about this one.
This is Jefferson Park, Ward 2, by Klaus Ryman Phillip, AIA, for Raymond Jacobs to request a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission to the Planning Commission regarding a request to rezone the property to a simplified planned unit development in accordance with the regulations of the R4 Residential District, Historic Landmark District, and Jefferson Park Urban Conservation District, except with the restrictions and uses as called out within the proposed SPUD. So I won't make my whole speech again about why we review SPUDs. You know, if we go a couple of months without one, I'll do that again. I'll write myself a script. To talk about this proposal, this is a site that previously had a multifamily historic structure. I think at various points it might have had 2 units, 4 units. We don't know exactly how many were in there at various points in time. That structure was demolished in approximately 2017. The commission had previously provided recommendations on it as part of the dilapidated structure process. The proposal for the SPUD really doesn't change any of their existing zoning. They're already R4 with an HL overlay and a UCD overlay. It just changes the bulk regulations of those zoning districts in order to accommodate the proposed development. We have discussed this previously with some of our other rezoning applications that our current R4 zoning regulations do not accommodate a typical historic multifamily structure. They would not, you can see the previous structure there on the screen. This would not meet current zoning. You would have to do an SPUD to build that building today, even though that's what was there for 100 years, and that is very similar to the structures that are all up and down this area of Robinson. So they are asking to allow, they're not varying any of the allowed uses in order to accommodate what they're asking for. They are asking for a maximum height of 2 stories and 35 feet. This is consistent with R4, except that R4 has a requirement that when you are within or abutting a historic district, you're limited to 20 feet and 1 story, so they're just removing that limitation. Staff felt like that was logical. This is a block full of multi-story, 2-story buildings. They are limiting the number of buildings to no more than 2 primary buildings and 1 detached garage, and that's not something that HP guidelines currently address. They are maintaining the existing setback along Robinson as zoned at 25 feet, and they're asking for 0 feet at the rear where they abut an alley. That's along the east property line, 5 feet along the south property line, which is consistent with the current zoning, and then 0 feet at the north side of the property, abutting Northwest 28th Street. So that's the one that is a bigger variation from what the current zoning allows. However, from looking at aerial photos, historic images of the building, as well as some documentation that the applicant has provided of the existing setbacks, that 0 setback appears consistent with what was there before and with the setback of the building directly across the street to the west now. And you've got this in PrimeGov, but I'll share. So you can see the building across Robinson from them is also at about 0 feet. It's a fairly deep right-of-way from Northwest 28th Street. So even though that's a change from what the base zoning requires, staff felt that that setback was not incompatible with the character of this particular location. They are asking for a lot size and width that would potentially accommodate dividing this property into 2 parcels. I haven't yet indicated that they're planning on doing that, but the minimum lot size and lot width would allow for that in the future if someone pursued that. Proposed access and open space are fairly consistent with what's already allowed by their existing zoning, and then they are retaining the historic preservation design review process. They are similar to the previous SPUD, proposing to be consistent with current code requirements for parking, except for allowing garages to count toward that parking requirement. So we did provide a recommendation to recommend approval of this SPUD with no conditions, although the applicant, I think, might want to speak to making one minor change regarding spacing between primary and accessory buildings. It's something that's come up on another project that wasn't captured in an SPUD that they want to add into this one. So.
Okay. Please state your name and address and talk to us about the project.
Yeah, Klaus Roman Phillip, 2801 North Hudson. And before getting to this one too much, I want to echo Marva's comments. For both this SPUD and the last SPUD, we had really positive interaction with the neighbors. And what's unique about this one and the other SPUD is the developer is also going to be occupying one of the units in both of those. And I feel like it's important to have a good relationship with your neighbors. And so I'm happy that, he's starting off with a positive relationship with the neighborhood. They don't, there's no animosity between the developer, neighbors, and yeah, it's been a good process. And staff as well. I think we've gone through 5 or 6 iterations of the last site plan, and then this one was a little bit simpler. But anyway, so appreciate everyone for working with us on that. And so yeah, basically it's R4, it's staying R4 essentially, except we need to vary the setbacks. But one thing that's come up on a different SPUD is that beside building code, there's a provision in the municipal code that specifies space between detached garages and houses. So really there's not, if it's on the same lot, there's really not a separation requirement for building code. There's not really a life safety issue. But municipal code specifies 6 feet, and for this particular project, we had like a 4-foot separation with like a walkway basically between a garage and one of the buildings, and this kind of came out like the last few days basically, so we haven't had a chance to modify the staff report and have staff work through it, but I wanted to bring it up because we have Planning Commission tomorrow, so we're going to bring it up at Planning Commission as well, and there's always an opportunity to modify some of the master design statement language between Planning Commission and City Council. So figured if I would bring it up now, see if there's any issues with that, and if if the commission feels like that's something, I don't even know how we'd add that, if it's like a comment we make or something in the recommendation. But
So I anticipate attending Planning Commission. The commission could either add a comment to your recommendation addressing that, whether you support or do not support allowing for the garage and the primary structure to be within 4 feet of each other, or I can just report out verbally at Planning Commission that there was or was not objection to that. So just however formal you guys want to be with addressing that little hiccup that has identified itself to us.
yeah.
And that space is between you're saying the proposed garage and the first 2-unit building just to the north of it?
Yeah, I don't know if we have the, this is pretty close to what we're proposing. As a matter of fact, we submitted the HP application for the actual design yesterday. So hopefully, I'll be back next month with the CA for this one. But yeah, so the idea, we have really 3 different structures, 2 main structures with living units in them, and then the proposed garage. And you can see between the garage and that second living structure, there's kind of a walkway. He wanted to have some back doors off the back of the garage, and then that would give people the ability to walk into their, get to their unit from the back door, essentially, like if you park or groceries and that kind of thing. So that's the plan there. We're a little bit constrained on the site because we also wanted to make sure we had adequate parking. That was, a concern of the neighborhood, of course, and he wanted to make sure that there are 2 parking spaces for each unit. So we've set the garage back 18 feet from the alley where we're taking access. You can park basically 1 car in front of a garage, and then you still have the garage unit. So that's the issue. Theoretically, we'd need 6 feet per Municode, but it's not a life safety issue, it's not a building code issue, it's just a municipal code issue. So we're gonna see if we could modify that to 4 feet, basically.
Okay, commissioners, what questions do you have for the applicant? Any comments?
I don't have any. I like this one too. I think y'all have done a really nice job today. Feels really appropriate. Spatially, of course, we haven't seen anything else, but it feels like an appropriate use of the space.
Okay. Any other comments, commissioners? Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Okay, there being none. Do we have a motion, a recommendation on this item?
Oh, sorry. Can we jump back to how we're comfortable communicating that condition and what the preference is there?
On the spacing?
Mhm.
Or the,
So I think you could make the recommendation that's in the staff report with the findings and the additional comment that the commission supports reducing the separation between the primary structure and the garage to 4 feet.
Okay.
That still felt like a lot of words, sorry.
Okay. I recommend approval of SPUD 01655 with the specific findings in the staff report and the added comment that the Historic Preservation Commission is comfortable with the reduced spacing between the primary and accessory structures as discussed in today's hearing.
okay. We've got a motion to recommend approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a second. Commissioners, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, it looks like that item has been recommended to approval, and it will move on to the Planning Commission now. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, next up on our agenda, we have communications and reports. Any administrative approvals?
You have many administrative approvals, nothing particular to report. As always, feel free to contact staff if you have questions about any of those. They're also posted online, so you can check those out at any time.
Okay. Any withdrawals?
One withdrawal, I think just never got to where we needed to get on documentation with that one. No administrative closings. City Council, I will report that this doesn't directly affect HP Commission, but they approved the ordinance amendment to consolidate our other design review committees. So we will go down to a Downtown Design Commission and Urban Design Commission, and they'll be absorbing the other design review bodies. So you may hear about that from people. So that'll go into effect next month, or the end of this month, technically. Yeah, so that's our exciting news from council.
Okay. Anything, looks like nothing from Board of Adjustment?
Nothing from Board of Adjustment to
Planning
report,
Commission?
nothing at Planning Commission.
Anything from Municipal Counselor's Office? Okay. Let's see here, next meeting date. The next regularly scheduled meeting for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024 at 2 p.m. at the Municipal Building, City Council Chambers. New applications for this meeting were received August 6, 2024. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. The next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, September 11th, 2024 from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. in the Embark Large Conference Room, Suite B at 431 West Main Street. Are there any items from commissioners? I'm sorry,
So,
Katie.
that's okay, I was just going to jump in. I wanted to talk just briefly to the folks that are here about workshops. We have a Lunch and Learn workshop next week with Old Home Rescue, talking about cladding materials, wood siding, et cetera. So if you haven't already, let us know if you will be coming to that or not. And we'll make sure that we get the word out to other folks as well that might be interested in attending. And if there's anyone in particular you know of in your neighborhood, people you work with that you think would be interested in that presentation, please let us know, let them know that they're welcome to attend. It is a public meeting because there's a potential for quorum. So it'll be posted, it'll be in the Embark conference room. And then I think we may end up punting on the September 11th workshop because we have our September 20th camp that is scheduled. You all have received an invitation for that. This is a program that the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions offers. We are using certified local government grant funding to bring 3 professional speakers in from NAPC. They will present about a wide array of historic preservation topics. It's a really great program that they do. We pay money for them to come. We get 30 seats included with the rate that we pay. We will provide lunch, but we really do need to know if people are coming or not, and if you're not coming, or if you say you're coming and then you change your mind, we need to know so that we can offer those seats to other folks and get the most bang for our buck on that workshop. So you should all have that invite on your calendar. If you haven't already taken a look at that, let us know and we'll send a reminder email as well. And then on that September 11th workshop, I do want to schedule another one later in the fall. We've had a couple of conversations with some neighborhood representatives as well as with some council members about trying to do some workshops and some training specifically on these rezonings for both the commission and the residents to help people understand the process, what we're reviewing, what we're not reviewing, how all of these different bodies work together when they're looking at these projects. We typically do workshops that are specific to our guidelines or to, wood window repair or kind of technical things like that. But I think there's a real interest in hearing more about the code and zoning and how those things get changed and how that affects our historic districts. So that is kind of what's on the radar for future workshop content, and we'll be checking with you guys about a date for that. So.
Okay, thank you. Any items from commissioners? Any citizens to be heard? None? I think we can adjourn.